Hey there, and welcome to Crime for Sleep. I know you're having trouble falling asleep, so let me keep you company with true crime stories from around the world. Before we dive in, I'm curious, where did you first hear this one? If you enjoy these stories, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Now get comfortable, and let's get into tonight's case. Crime 1. I always fold my towels the same way, edges in trifold, stacked by color. I've done it for years without even thinking. But when I opened the linen closet that morning, the top towel was folded in halves, not thirds, sloppy, wrong. I stared at it longer than I should have. Then I checked the others. The third one down had a small reddish stain near the corner, almost hidden in the crease. I hadn't used that set in weeks, and the guest room door was open. The house felt different that morning. The air carried a scent I couldn't place, something metallic mixed with cleaning solution. I walked through each room, checking corners, feeling for what was off. The guest room bed was made too perfectly. Hospital corners. I don't make beds like that, never have. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through the messages from the past week. My cousin had asked to stay over while her apartment was being fumigated. She texted me that she was leaving early, thanking me for the hospitality. But the timestamp showed she'd sent it at 3 in the morning. Who leaves that early? Who texts at that hour? The kitchen sink was spotless, too spotless. The faucet gleamed like it had been scrubbed with bleach. I opened the cabinet beneath and found the cleaning supplies pushed to the back, bottles arranged differently than I remembered. The rubber gloves were missing from their usual hook. I called her. The phone rang 6 times before going to voicemail. Her voice sounded strained in the greeting, breathless. I'd never noticed that before. I tried again an hour later. Same result. The neighbor across the street was watering his roses when I stepped outside. He waved, then walked over with that eager expression people get when they have gossip to share. He'd seen a car in my driveway 2 nights ago, he said. Late, a sedan he didn't recognize. The engine had been running for a while before it finally pulled away. I thanked him and went back inside, my hands shaking slightly as I locked the door. I found myself standing in the guest room again, staring at the bed. The pillows were fluffed, but there was an indentation in one, subtle but unmistakable. Someone had slept here more recently than I thought. I pressed my palm against the mattress and felt the faint coolness of dried moisture beneath the sheets. The police report was filed 3 days later, a missing person case. The family had been looking for her since the weekend. She'd never made it home from my house. Her phone had gone dead somewhere between my street and the highway. The last ping from her cell tower placed her within a mile of my neighborhood. The detective who came to interview me was thorough but gentle. He asked about her stay, her mood, whether she'd mentioned meeting anyone or going anywhere specific. I told him about the early morning text, the car my neighbor had seen. He wrote everything down in careful block letters. But I didn't tell him about the towels, or the way the bathroom mirror had been wiped clean of fingerprints, or how the trash bin liner was fresh when I knew I hadn't changed it. Small things, things that might mean nothing. The investigation stretched on for weeks. Search parties combed the wooded areas near the highway. Volunteers posted flyers with her photograph, smiling, carefree, nothing like the tense expression I remembered from her last visit. The family held vigils. The local news ran segments asking for information. I started checking the linen closet every morning. The towels stayed folded my way now, but I couldn't shake the feeling that someone else had been in that closet, touching those fabrics, leaving traces I couldn't quite identify. Sometimes I'd catch myself holding a towel up to the light, searching for stains that weren't there. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A gas station security camera had captured footage of her car at a convenience store 20 miles away. The timestamp showed she'd been there hours after she'd supposedly left my house. She was alone in the frame, but something about her posture seemed wrong, hunched, frightened. The clerk remembered her. She'd bought a phone charger and asked to use the restroom. She'd seemed nervous, kept looking over her shoulder. When she'd paid, her hands were shaking so badly she'd dropped the change. The trail went cold after that. No more camera footage, no more witnesses, no more clues. I kept thinking about that morning when I'd found the towels folded wrong, about the reddish stain, about the missing rubber gloves. The detective had asked if she'd seemed upset about anything during her stay. I'd said no, but that wasn't entirely true. She'd been asking questions, strange questions, about the house, about the neighborhood, about people I'd rather not discuss. The case file sits open somewhere, gathering dust. The family still hopes. The community has mostly moved on, but I remember everything differently now. The way she'd looked at me that last evening. The way she'd said goodnight like she was testing the word. The way she'd closed her bedroom door just a little too quietly. I replaced all the towels eventually. New colors, different textures. But every morning when I open that closet, I check the folds first. Because I know someone else has been in my house. Someone who knows how to clean up after themselves. Someone who's still out there. And sometimes when the house settles in the quiet hours before dawn, I wonder if she ever really left at all. Crime 2, I couldn't get into the bathroom. The key wouldn't turn. At first I thought the knob was just jammed, but when I looked closer I realized the lock had been installed backwards. The screws were on the outside now. I don't know how I missed it before. The sink was still dripping when I finally pried the door open, and someone had left a damp rag on the floor. It smelled like bleach, but there were dark smudges on the edges. I hadn't cleaned anything. The house felt different after that discovery. Every creak in the floorboards seemed deliberate. Every shadow in the corner of my vision held weight. I started paying attention to things I'd never noticed before. The way the mail was stacked differently each afternoon. How certain books on the shelf were turned spine-in when I was sure they'd been facing out. My neighbor had been acting strange for weeks. She'd wave from her window but never come outside when I was in the yard. Her car would disappear for days, then reappear in the driveway with mud on the tires and a different parking angle. When I finally knocked on her door to ask about borrowing sugar, she answered with latex gloves on her hands. Kitchen cleaning, she explained, but I could smell something metallic through the gap in the door. The detective assigned to the missing person case seemed tired. His shirt had coffee stains, and he kept checking his phone while I explained about the reversed lock. He wrote down what I said, but his pen barely moved across the paper. Just vandalism, probably. Kids playing pranks. But the missing woman had been my tenant for 8 months. She paid rent early every month, left her porch light on until exactly midnight, and always locked her car twice. I found her journal wedged behind the radiator in her bedroom. The pages were filled with neat handwriting that gradually became erratic. She'd been documenting sounds in the walls, footsteps on the roof, and shadows that moved wrong. But the entries stopped making sense toward the end. Fragments about someone watching her sleep, about keys that worked in locks they shouldn't fit, about feeling dizzy after drinking water from her own tap. The last entry was just one line. The bathroom door locks from the outside now. I called the detective again. This time he listened differently. He asked me to walk through the house while he took notes. We stood in the bathroom together, and he ran his fingers along the door frame. Paint chips fell to the floor. The wood was splintered in places where screws had been removed and replaced. Someone had definitely reversed the lock mechanism. But then he found something else. Behind the medicine cabinet, there was a small hole drilled through the wall, just big enough for a thin wire or a small camera. The detective used his phone's flashlight to peer through. On the other side was the bedroom closet. Someone could have watched her getting ready each morning, brushing her teeth before bed. My hands started shaking. I'd given her that apartment. I'd checked her references, collected her deposit, handed her the keys, but I'd never changed the locks from the previous tenant. And now I couldn't remember exactly when I'd last seen her face to face, rather than just glimpsing her silhouette through windows. The detective asked if I had security cameras. I did, one pointed at the front entrance, another at the back door. But when we reviewed the footage, there were gaps, entire afternoons missing from the recordings. Someone had accessed the system and deleted specific segments. Someone who knew exactly when to erase their presence. We found her car parked 3 blocks away, keys still in the ignition. The interior smelled like the same bleach from the bathroom rag. Her purse was on the passenger seat with her wallet inside, cash untouched. But her identification was gone. Driver's license, credit cards, anything with her name or photograph removed with surgical precision. I started sleeping in the living room after that. The upstairs felt contaminated somehow. Every night I'd listen for sounds in the walls, for footsteps on the roof. The house seemed to be settling differently, as if the weight distribution had changed. As if someone else was moving through spaces they shouldn't occupy. The detective stopped returning my calls after the second week. The case file was transferred to someone else, then someone else again. Each new officer seemed less interested than the last. Missing adults leave on their own sometimes. No signs of struggle, no evidence of foul play, just a woman who decided to disappear. But I kept thinking about that reversed lock, about the hole behind the medicine cabinet, about latex gloves worn for kitchen cleaning in the middle of the afternoon, about security footage that deleted itself at convenient intervals. I started watching my neighbor more carefully. She'd installed new curtains, blackout fabric that made her windows look empty even during the day. Her garbage cans were always perfectly clean, as if they'd been scrubbed with bleach. And sometimes, late at night, I'd see her standing in her backyard with a garden hose, watering the same patch of dirt over and over. The soil there looked different from the rest of her yard, darker, more recently disturbed. I never told the police about my suspicions. What could I say? That my neighbor cleaned her garbage cans too thoroughly, that she watered her garden with unusual dedication, that she wore gloves while cooking and preferred her windows dark. Instead, I moved out of the house 3 months later, sold it to a young couple who seemed excited about the rental income potential. I gave them all the keys I had, including the spare set I'd kept for emergencies. But I never mentioned the reversed lock in the upstairs bathroom. Sometimes I wonder if they've noticed it yet, if they've found the hole behind the medicine cabinet, if their tenant pays rent early and locks her car twice and leaves her porch light on until midnight. Or if they've already learned to sleep in the living room, listening for sounds in the walls that shouldn't be there. Crime 3, I never noticed the patch before. It was small, maybe 3 feet across, tucked behind the shed. The soil looked disturbed, too soft. It didn't match the dry ground around it. I pushed my shoe into it gently and sank deeper than I should have. I bent down and found scraps of fabric mixed in with the dirt, blue, maybe denim. Torn. I didn't dig further. I couldn't, but I haven't used the shovel in weeks, and it's not where I left it. The fabric felt wrong between my fingers, too familiar. I stared at that patch of earth for what felt like forever, my mind racing back to conversations I'd tried to forget. My neighbor had mentioned someone going missing from the next block over, a young person who'd been walking home one evening and never made it. The police had canvassed the area twice, but they'd focused on the main roads. They hadn't looked behind sheds. I went inside and called the number on the business card the detective had left weeks ago. My voice shook as I explained what I'd found. She said she'd be right over. While I waited, I paced the kitchen, trying to remember when I'd last been behind that shed. The lawnmower was stored there, but I hadn't cut grass recently. Someone else had access to my yard. Someone who knew I worked long shifts and wouldn't notice. The detective arrived with another officer and a photographer. They sectioned off the area with yellow tape that fluttered in the breeze like a warning. I watched from my kitchen window as they carefully excavated the soil. My coffee grew cold in my hands. The photographer's camera clicked repeatedly, documenting something I couldn't see from this distance. They found more fabric, then a wallet. The detective came to my door with latex gloves still on her hands and asked if we could talk inside. She showed me the wallet through a clear evidence bag. The driver's license photo stared back at me, a face I recognized but couldn't quite place. Someone from the neighborhood, maybe someone I'd seen at the grocery store or walking past my house. The questions started gentle but grew sharper. When had I last been in my backyard? Who else had access to my property? Did I know the victim? The detective's eyes never left my face as I answered. I told her about the spare key under the flower pot, about my routine, about how I sometimes forgot to lock the gate. She wrote everything down. That evening, after they'd taken their samples and measurements, I sat in my living room trying to make sense of what had happened in my own backyard. The television news was already covering the story. They called it a breakthrough in the missing person case. They mentioned my address. I turned off the TV and closed the curtains. The next morning brought reporters and curious neighbors. I stopped answering my phone. The detective called several times, asking me to come in for additional questions. Each conversation felt like an interrogation disguised as a favor. She wanted to know about my relationships, my habits, my mental state. I started to wonder if they suspected me of more than just having an unlucky backyard. I hired a lawyer after the third formal interview. He advised me to stay quiet, to let the investigation run its course. But silence felt like guilt, and the weight of it pressed down on me every time I looked out at that yellow tape. The media painted me as either a hero who helped solve a case or a suspect who got careless. Neither version felt true. The forensics team returned to dig deeper. They found more items, a watch, pieces of clothing, things that suggested this wasn't the first time my property had been used this way. The detective's questions became accusations wrapped in politeness. Why hadn't I noticed anything before? How could someone bury evidence in my yard without my knowledge? What was I hiding? I started having dreams about that patch of dirt. In them, I was the one holding the shovel, but I couldn't remember what I'd buried. I'd wake up with soil under my fingernails even though I hadn't been outside. My lawyer said stress could cause physical symptoms, but the dirt felt real enough. I stopped sleeping well. The investigation expanded to include other missing persons from the area. 3 more cases with similar circumstances. Young people who'd vanished without leaving much of a trail. The detective suggested someone local was responsible, someone who knew the neighborhood patterns and routines, someone who could move freely without attracting attention. I found myself studying my neighbors differently. The man who walked his dog at odd hours, the woman who kept her curtains drawn but seemed to know everyone's business, the couple who'd moved in recently but claimed to have lived here for years. Everyone became suspicious when viewed through the lens of what had been found in my backyard. The DNA results came back inconclusive. Too degraded, they said, but they found fingerprints on some of the evidence. The detective called to tell me they were running them through databases. She said it might take time, but they'd find their match. Her tone suggested she already had someone in mind. I started questioning my own memories. Had I really not noticed that patch of dirt before? The more I thought about it, the more uncertain I became. Maybe I had seen it but dismissed it as just another imperfection in my unkempt yard. Maybe I'd even walked past it multiple times without registering what it meant. The spare key was gone when I checked. I'd assumed the police had taken it for evidence, but when I asked, they said they'd returned it to its hiding place. Someone else had been there, someone who knew about my habits, my schedule, my tendency to leave things unlocked. The realization that I'd been watched, studied, made my skin crawl. The case went cold after 2 months. No arrests, no charges, just a file that got thicker but never reached a conclusion. The detectives stopped calling as frequently. The reporters moved on to other stories. But I remained, living in a house that felt contaminated by what had been buried just steps from my door. I think about moving, but where would I go? And what if the person responsible is counting on that? What if driving me away was part of the plan? The uncertainty has become a permanent resident in my mind, feeding on every unexplained sound, every shadow that doesn't belong. Sometimes I catch myself staring at that patch of dirt, now refilled and reseeded. The grass is trying to grow back, but it looks different from the rest of the yard. Newer, more deliberate, like someone is trying very hard to make it look normal again. The truth is, I'll never know if I was chosen randomly or specifically. If my yard was just convenient, or if there was something about me that made it perfect for hiding secrets. The not knowing is its own kind of burial, covering up certainty and leaving only questions that multiply in the dark. Crime 4, there's a picture I keep on the kitchen counter, an old one of the house in winter, untouched snow, bare trees. But today when I walked past it, I froze. The frame was still there in the same spot, but the photo inside had changed. Same house, different season. And someone was standing at the window staring out. I never printed that photo. I've never seen it before. I checked the back, same frame, same glass, just not my picture anymore. The figure in the window was small, barely visible behind the reflection of glass, but unmistakably human. A silhouette with arms crossed, watching something beyond the frame's edge. The angle suggested the photo was taken from across the street, maybe from the old oak that used to stand there before the storm brought it down. My hands shook as I held the frame closer to the light. The quality was different too, grainier, older somehow, like it had been developed in a basement darkroom rather than printed at the corner shop. I've been staying in this house for 3 months now, ever since my aunt passed and left it to me in her will. The neighbors had been kind enough, bringing casseroles and sharing stories about her quiet life here. She'd lived alone for decades, they said, kept to herself mostly, though she always waved from that same window where the figure now stood in this impossible photograph. The smell hit me then, that faint chemical scent that clings to old photography paper. I'd noticed it before in the basement, assumed it was just mustiness from years of storage. But now, holding this foreign image, the odor seemed to rise from the photograph itself, sharp and metallic against my fingertips. I set the frame down and walked to the window, the same one from the photo. The view outside was exactly as I remembered: empty street, neighbor's fence, the stump where the oak used to be. But something felt different about standing there, like I was completing a picture someone else had started. The afternoon light filtered through the glass the same way it did in the photograph, casting the same shadows across the floor. That evening I called the neighbor across the street. She answered on the first ring, her voice warm but tired. I asked about the oak tree when it had fallen, trying to sound casual. Her pause stretched longer than it should have. "That tree's been gone for 15 years now," she said finally. "Came down the same night your aunt's husband disappeared. Funny you should ask about it." I'd never known my aunt was married. The family had never mentioned a husband, and I'd seen no trace of a man's presence in the house, No clothes, no photographs, no personal effects. The silence on the other end of the line felt heavy with things unsaid. He just left one day, she continued, her voice dropping to almost a whisper. Police said there was no sign of foul play, no indication of where he might have gone. Your aunt never talked about it, but I remember seeing lights in that basement for weeks after he vanished, strange hours, like someone was working down there through the night. The basement, I'd avoided it mostly, put off by the musty smell and the way the single bulb cast shadows that moved when they shouldn't. But now I found myself standing at the top of the stairs, my hand on the light switch, breathing in that chemical scent that seemed stronger here, almost overwhelming. The wooden steps creaked under my weight as I descended. The basement was larger than I'd expected, stretching beyond what the house's footprint should have allowed. Along one wall I discovered what I'd been unconsciously avoiding, a darkroom setup, complete but covered in decades of dust. Red light bulbs, developing trays, bottles of chemicals that had long since crystallized. And hanging on a line, like clothes left to dry, were dozens of photographs. The images were all of the house, taken from various angles, different seasons, different years based on the changes in landscaping and where. But in each one, if you looked carefully, there was always a figure. Sometimes in the window, sometimes barely visible behind a tree, sometimes just a shadow that shouldn't exist. The photos span what must have been years, possibly decades, all documenting the same patient watching. I found a box beneath the enlarger filled with negatives and contact sheets. My hands trembled as I held them up to the dim light. There were hundreds of images methodically catalogued, each one marked with dates going back 20 years. The handwriting was precise, obsessive, noting weather conditions and optimal shooting times. But whose handwriting was it? One envelope was marked differently from the others, sealed with wax that had cracked with age. Inside were photos I wished I'd never seen, images of the inside of the house taken when someone was clearly living here, unaware they were being watched. Pictures of my aunt sleeping, cooking, reading in her chair. And in several there was another figure, a man I didn't recognize, caught in the act of being photographed while he himself was photographing. The last image in the envelope made my blood turn cold. It was taken from inside the house, looking out through that kitchen window at someone standing across the street with a camera. The timestamp on the back was from just 3 months ago, the day after my aunt's funeral. I turned the photograph over, searching for more information, and found a note written in the same precise handwriting. The watcher becomes the watched. The frame holds what it needs to hold. The smell of chemicals seemed to intensify, making my eyes water. I looked up from the photograph to find that the single bulb above had been joined by the red darkroom lights, casting everything in an eerie glow I hadn't switched on. The developing trays on the counter held fresh solution, still rippling as if recently disturbed. Footsteps creaked on the floor above me, slow, measured, moving from room to room in a pattern I recognized from weeks of living here alone. Someone was walking through my house, retracing steps they'd taken countless times before. The sound stopped directly above where I stood, right at the kitchen counter where the frame waited. I climbed the stairs slowly, each step deliberating whether to continue or retreat. The chemical smell followed me up, stronger now, mixed with something else, the scent of someone who'd been standing in winter air, waiting patiently for the right moment to step inside. The kitchen was empty when I reached it, but the frame on the counter had changed again. The same house, the same season, but now the figure in the window was clearer, facing outward with features I could almost make out. Features that looked disturbingly familiar when I caught my reflection in the glass. I picked up the phone to call the police, but the line was dead. It had been working just hours before when I'd spoken to the neighbor. I checked the connection, traced the cord to where it had been cleanly cut, the end still showing copper that hadn't had time to oxidize. The realization settled over me slowly, like a photograph developing in solution. I wasn't the first person to inherit this house. I wasn't the first to find these pictures. The pattern had been established long before I arrived, a careful documentation of watchers and watched, each thinking they were the observer rather than the observed. The frame on the counter now held a new photograph, one taken tonight, showing me standing in the basement, looking up at those red lights with an expression of growing understanding. In the background, barely visible in the shadows, another figure watched from the darkroom doorway. I don't know who's been taking these pictures or how long this has been going on. What I do know is that the frame never lies. It shows what needs to be shown when it needs to be shown. And tonight, it's showing me that some mysteries aren't meant to be solved, they're meant to be continued. The chemical smell has faded now, replaced by the scent of winter air seeping through windows that should be sealed tight. Somewhere in this house, someone is waiting with infinite patience, camera ready, for the next frame to be filled. And I'm beginning to understand that leaving isn't really an option anymore. The frame holds what it needs to hold, and now it needs to hold me. Crime 5, the cologne was faint but unmistakable, sharp, bitter, and entirely out of place. I haven't kept any of his things. I got rid of everything. Still, when I opened the hall closet to grab a jacket, the smell hit me so fast I nearly stepped back. The coat I reached for was zipped, even though I never zipped them in storage, and in the pocket was a single coin wrapped in napkin paper. I didn't put it there. I don't even carry that kind of change. I held the coin between my fingers, feeling its weight, foreign currency worn smooth around the edges, the kind he used to collect from his business trips, always leaving them scattered on the kitchen counter like breadcrumbs of places I'd never been. The napkin paper was soft, almost dissolving at my touch, but there was something written on it in pencil, numbers, an address maybe, or coordinates. I recognized his handwriting immediately, those cramped, slanted letters that always looked like they were running away from something. The investigating officer had been thorough, or so I thought. Every drawer opened, every surface dusted, every corner of our life together scrutinized and catalogued. They took photographs of everything, asked me to identify items that seemed out of place. I remembered standing in that same hallway, watching strangers handle our belongings with latex gloves, treating our home like a crime scene, because that's what it had become. But they missed this coin, or maybe they didn't miss it. Maybe someone put it there after they left. I found his old address book in the desk drawer, the one I should have thrown away months ago. The pages were yellowed, filled with names I didn't recognize and numbers written in different pens, different moods. Some entries were crossed out, others circled. I flipped through, looking for anything that matched the numbers on the napkin. The paper felt brittle under my fingers, like it might crumble if I wasn't careful. There on page 47 was a match, not exact but close enough to make my heart skip. The last 4 digits were the same, written in that familiar rushed scrawl. Next to them a single letter, M below that, a note that made my blood feel cold. She knows more than she's saying. I had never seen this entry before. I thought I knew every page of that book, every contact, every secret he might have kept. We used to joke about his terrible memory, how he wrote everything down because he couldn't trust himself to remember. Now I wondered what else he had written down that I never found. The woman who answered the phone had a voice like smoke, rough around the edges but strangely familiar. When I mentioned his name, the line went quiet for so long I thought she had hung up. Then she spoke, and her words cut through me like glass. "You're the wife," she said, not a question. a statement of fact that somehow sounded like an accusation. I corrected, though I wasn't sure why the distinction mattered. He talked about you, said you had a way of seeing things that weren't there, making connections that didn't exist. Her laugh was bitter. Funny how he described you exactly the same way I would have described him. She agreed to meet me at a coffee shop, though she wouldn't tell me her name over the phone. Said she'd recognize me, that he had shown her pictures. That detail bothered me more than I wanted to admit. What pictures, when, and why hadn't I known about any of this? The woman was smaller than I expected, with nervous hands that never seemed to find a comfortable position. She kept glancing at the door like she was expecting someone else to walk in. When she spoke, she chose her words carefully, as if she was afraid of saying too much. He came to see me the week before he disappeared, she said, stirring sugar into coffee that was already sweet enough. Said he was in trouble, that someone was following him, watching the house, watching you. I felt my stomach drop. What kind of trouble? The kind that gets people killed. She met my eyes for the first time since sitting down. He left something with me, said if anything happened, I should give it to the police. But when they never came asking, I figured maybe he was just being paranoid again. She reached into her purse and pulled out a small recording device, the kind journalists use for interviews. It looked ancient, held together with tape and hope. She slid it across the table, and I noticed her fingers were shaking. Listen to it when you get home, she said, but don't listen to it alone, and don't trust anyone who says they want to help you find the truth. Sometimes the truth is more dangerous than the lie. The recording was mostly static at first, then his voice came through, distorted but unmistakable. He was talking to someone, but I couldn't make out the other person's words, just murmurs, agreements, the occasional sharp intake of breath. He was scared. I had never heard him scared before, not in all our years together. She doesn't know anything, he was saying. I made sure of that, but if something happens to me, she's going to start looking. She's going to start asking questions, and once she starts, she won't stop until she finds answers. The other voice said something that made him laugh, but it wasn't a happy sound. It was the laugh of someone who had run out of options. You don't know her like I do, he continued. She's stubborn, relentless. If you hurt her, if you even touch her, I'll make sure everyone knows what really happened that night. I have insurance. Insurance? What kind of insurance? And what night was he talking about? The recording cut out abruptly, leaving me sitting in my kitchen with more questions than answers. I played it 3 more times, trying to catch details I might have missed, trying to identify the other voice. But all I could hear was fear, and the sound of a man who knew he was running out of time. I went back to the closet, searching for anything else he might have hidden. The cologne smell was fainter now, but still there, clinging to the fabric like a ghost. I checked every pocket, every corner, every shoe box stacked on the upper shelves. Nothing. But when I was putting everything back, I noticed something I had missed before. One of the floorboards was slightly raised, just enough to catch the light differently. I pressed down on it and felt it give way slightly. Underneath was a gap just wide enough for an envelope. Inside the envelope were photographs, not of me, not of us together, but of places I didn't recognize. Buildings, license plates, people walking down streets with their faces turned away from the camera, and at the bottom, a photo of a grave with fresh flowers. The headstone was partially obscured, but I could make out enough letters to spell a name I recognized. It was the name of a woman who had gone missing 2 years ago, a case that had made headlines for weeks before fading into the background noise of unsolved mysteries. They had never found her body. they had never found her killer. But apparently he had found her grave. I sat on the closet floor, surrounded by evidence of a life I never knew he was living, holding proof of secrets I was never meant to discover. The woman on the phone had been right about one thing: the truth was more dangerous than the lie. Because now I knew that the man I had loved, the man I had mourned, the man whose disappearance had torn my life apart, was not who I thought he was. And somewhere out there, someone was still watching, still waiting, still making sure that some secret stayed buried. The cologne smell was getting stronger. Crime 6, it wasn't like that before, I'm sure of it. That window always opened just fine. But now there were nails, 3 of them driven in at an angle along the sash, bent, rushed. The frame around them looked splintered, like someone had done it from the inside in a panic. I tried to pull them out, but they were deep. On the floor nearby was a sliver of wood with a drop of something dark on the tip. I haven't been in that room since. The house belonged to my neighbor, the elderly woman who lived alone with her 2 cats. She'd ask me to check on things while she visited her sister. Simple enough. Water the plants, collect the mail, make sure everything looked normal from the outside. But normal is a word that loses meaning when you're standing in someone else's kitchen, holding their spare key, and realizing the silence is too complete. The cats were gone. That should have been my first warning. She never mentioned anything about taking them with her. They were indoor cats, skittish things that barely came out when I'd visit. Now the house felt hollow without their presence, like something essential had been removed. I found the note on her kitchen table, written in her careful handwriting. Gone to see my sister, back soon. Thank you for watching the house. But the paper felt wrong under my fingers, too smooth, too clean. I'd seen her writing before, grocery lists, birthday cards. This looked like her hand, but something about the pressure of the pen, the way the letters sat on the line, made my stomach tighten. The refrigerator hummed louder than it should have. Inside, milk had gone sour, vegetables had started to wilt. If she'd only been gone a few days, why did everything look like it had been abandoned for weeks? The bread on the counter had developed a fine layer of mold that shouldn't have been possible in such a short span. That's when I noticed the smell, faint at first, like something sweet mixed with copper. It seemed to drift from the back of the house, from the room she used as an office. The door was slightly ajar, and when I pushed it open, that's where I saw the window, the nails, the splintered wood, the dark stain. I should have called someone right then, should have backed out of that room and contacted the authorities. Instead, I found myself drawn to her desk, to the papers scattered across its surface. Bills mostly, some overdue. A letter from a lawyer about property disputes, and underneath it all, a photograph I'd never seen before. It showed her with a man I didn't recognize. They were standing in front of this very house, but decades younger. His arm was around her waist, and she was smiling in a way I'd never seen. But someone had taken a pen and drawn heavy black lines across his face, pressing so hard the tip had torn through the paper in places. The desk drawer was unlocked. Inside, more photographs. The same man, but in each one his face had been systematically destroyed, scratched out, burned with cigarettes, cut away entirely. At the bottom of the drawer was a newspaper clipping, yellowed with age. The headline spoke of a missing person case from 30 years ago. A local businessman who had vanished without a trace, leaving behind debts and accusations. The photograph in the article was small but clear enough. It was him, the man from her pictures. My hands were shaking as I set the clipping aside. Beneath it was something else, a small key, brass and old, with a tag attached. The tag had an address written in faded ink, not her address, somewhere across town, in a neighborhood I barely knew. The sound came from behind me then, soft, like footsteps, but not quite. I turned toward the window, toward those bent nails, and realized something I should have noticed before. The wood splinters weren't just on the inside of the frame. Some had fallen outside onto the ground below the window, which meant someone had been hammering from both sides. I left the house that day with more questions than answers. The key burned in my pocket as I drove across town, following roads I'd never taken to an address I wasn't sure I wanted to find. The house that matched the tag was smaller than hers, run down, with a for sale sign that looked like it had been there for years. The realtor was helpful, too helpful. She remembered the property well, she said. It had been on the market for decades, ever since the owner had disappeared. No body was ever found, but there had been signs of a struggle. The case went cold eventually. These things happen, she said with a shrug that seemed too casual. But she remembered something else. The missing man had been involved with a woman, older than him, quiet type. They'd had some kind of relationship, though no one knew exactly what kind. The woman had been questioned extensively, but nothing came of it. She had an alibi, witnesses who placed her elsewhere when he vanished. The realtor's voice grew softer as she continued. The woman still lived in the area, she believed, still in the same house she'd shared with her husband before he died, kept to herself mostly, except for those 2 cats of hers. I felt the world shift beneath my feet. My neighbor, the gentle woman who brought me cookies during holidays and worried about stray animals, had never mentioned a husband. In all our conversations, she'd spoken only of her sister, of a quiet life lived alone. The drive back to her house felt like swimming through thick water. Every detail I'd noticed before took on new weight. The way she'd always watched the street from her kitchen window. How she'd mentioned seeing people who weren't there, cars that didn't belong. I'd attributed it to age, to loneliness playing tricks on a mind too long isolated. But now I wondered if she'd been watching for someone specific, someone who might return after 30 years to ask questions she couldn't answer. The nails in the window weren't just bent from panic. They were bent from use, hammered in and pulled out so many times the metal had grown weak, as if that window had been sealed and unsealed repeatedly over the years, as if someone had been going in and out, carrying things that couldn't be seen from the street. I never found her sister. The phone number she'd given me led to a disconnected line. The address she'd mentioned didn't exist. When I finally worked up the courage to contact the police, they told me what I'd already begun to suspect. She had no sister, no family at all as far as they could determine. The house stands empty now. Sometimes I see lights in the windows, but the electricity was shut off months ago. The cats never came back, and neither did she. The realtor across town stopped returning my calls when I asked too many questions about the man who disappeared 30 years ago. But I still have the key, still have the photograph with the scratched-out face. And sometimes, when the wind is right, I catch that smell again. Sweet and copper, drifting from a house that should be empty, from a room with a window that should never have been opened in the first place. The authorities say there's no case to investigate, no evidence of wrongdoing. People move away all the time, they remind me. Elderly individuals sometimes make impulsive decisions, leave familiar places for reasons only they understand. But they don't know about the nails, about the photographs, about the way her handwriting looked too perfect on that final note, as if she'd practiced it dozens of times before getting it right. And they don't know about the dreams I've been having, dreams where I'm standing in that room again, watching someone hammer nails into a window frame with desperate, shaking hands. Someone who looks like her but younger. Someone who's trying to keep something in or keep something out and failing at both. I moved away 6 months later, found a new place, started fresh, but I kept the key, kept the photographs, Sometimes I take them out and study that scratched-out face, wondering what he knew, what he'd found, what made him dangerous enough to erase. The window was nailed shut, but windows can be opened again. Nails can be pulled out by someone with the right tools, the right motivation. And some secrets, no matter how deep you bury them, have a way of clawing back to the surface when you least expect them to. I haven't been back to that neighborhood, haven't driven past the empty house or tried to contact the realtor again. But sometimes I wonder if she's watching me now, the way she used to watch the street from her kitchen window, waiting to see if I'll figure out what really happened to the man in the photographs. Or if I'll just disappear one day, leaving behind my own mystery for someone else to solve. Crime 7, it came through the vents, quiet, breathy, almost unsure at first, like someone testing the shape of a word they weren't used to saying. But it said my name twice. I stayed still, thinking maybe I'd imagined it. Then I heard it again, louder this time. Familiar, but not quite right, like someone trying to sound like me. I pressed my ear to the vent and whispered something back. The voice answered immediately, but it didn't repeat what I said. It laughed. That was the beginning, the first crack in what I thought was my quiet, predictable life. I worked maintenance for a residential building, nothing glamorous, checking heating systems, fixing leaky faucets, replacing light bulbs. The kind of job where you become invisible to the people living above you. They see you in the hallways sometimes, nod politely, but you're just part of the building's machinery to them. The voice started appearing in different apartments, always through the vents, always knowing things it shouldn't know. Names, personal details, secrets whispered in bedrooms late enough that people thought no one was listening. I began keeping notes, not officially, just scratches on the back of work orders, observations I couldn't explain. The woman in apartment 12 had been receiving strange calls. She mentioned it to her neighbor, who mentioned it to me when I was fixing her bathroom sink. The caller knew her childhood nickname, knew about a scar on her back that only family members had seen. She changed her number twice. The calls continued. The elderly man on the third floor started leaving his television on constantly, volume cranked up high. When I asked him about it during a routine check, his hands shook as he explained. He'd been hearing voices in the walls, conversations that seemed to know intimate details about his deceased wife. He thought the noise would drown them out. I started paying attention to the building's infrastructure differently. The ventilation system was old but extensive, connecting every unit through a network of metal passages. During my inspections, I noticed something odd. Modifications to the ductwork that weren't in any of the original blueprints. Small cameras, barely visible, positioned at strategic points. Wiring that led to places I couldn't access without proper authorization. The building manager seemed nervous when I brought up the irregularities. He shuffled papers on his desk, avoided eye contact, claimed he'd look into it, but nothing changed. The modifications remained. The voices continued. I decided to stay late one evening, hiding in the maintenance room after my shift ended. The building settled into its nighttime rhythm. That's when I heard them clearly, not ghostly whispers or imagination. Real voices transmitted through speakers hidden within the ventilation system. Someone was monitoring conversations from multiple apartments simultaneously, recording private moments, then playing them back through different vents to terrorize residents. The setup was sophisticated, professional equipment hidden behind false walls in storage areas most people never accessed. I found recordings organized by apartment number, personal information compiled into detailed files, financial records, medical histories, relationship details, everything needed to manipulate someone psychologically. But who was behind it? The building manager had access, but his nervous behavior suggested he was more victim than perpetrator. The maintenance crew before me had quit suddenly, no forwarding information. The building owner lived overseas, managed everything through intermediaries. I photographed everything I could find, copied files onto a small drive I kept hidden in my tool bag. The evidence was overwhelming, but I needed to understand the scope. How many buildings were affected? How long had this been happening? Were residents being targeted for specific reasons, or was this random psychological torture? The breakthrough came when I discovered a live feed running to an external server. Following the connection led me to a basement apartment in another building across town. The same property management company, the same suspicious modifications to the ventilation system. Inside that basement, I found the control room, multiple monitors displaying live feeds from dozens of apartments across several buildings, audio equipment capable of real-time voice modification, files containing psychological profiles of hundreds of residents. This wasn't random harassment, it was systematic stalking on an industrial scale. The person running it all was someone I'd never suspected, someone who'd been watching me gather evidence, who knew I was getting close to the truth. They'd been using my own voice, recordings captured during my maintenance visits, to torment other residents, creating a web of suspicion where victims suspected each other, where everyone became afraid of their neighbors. When I finally confronted them with the evidence, they didn't deny it. They explained their methodology with clinical detachment, how isolation makes people vulnerable, how personal information becomes a weapon when used correctly, how fear spreads through communities like infection, turning neighbors against each other. But they made a mistake. They assumed I'd been working alone, that eliminating me would end the investigation. They didn't know about the copies I'd made, the evidence I'd already shared with authorities. They didn't realize that some of their victims had started comparing notes, recognizing patterns in their harassment. The case never went to trial. Too much evidence had been gathered illegally, they claimed. Technicalities and jurisdictional disputes buried the investigation. The building owner sold all his properties quickly, quietly. The management company dissolved overnight. Most residents never learned the truth about what had been happening to them. They moved away, seeking fresh starts in new places, carrying psychological scars they couldn't explain. Some still believed their apartments were haunted. Others think their neighbors were spying on them. I kept copies of everything, evidence that sits in a safety deposit box, waiting for someone brave enough to pursue justice when legal technicalities can't protect the guilty anymore. Sometimes I wonder if other buildings have similar setups, if other maintenance workers have noticed irregularities they can't explain. The voice in the vent still haunts me, not because it was supernatural, but because it was human. Because someone sat in that basement room, listening to private conversations, choosing which personal details would cause the most psychological damage. Because they found pleasure in orchestrating fear, in watching people lose trust in their own perceptions. That's the thing about true crime that documentaries never capture. It's not just about the big reveal or the dramatic arrest. It's about the victims who never get closure, the evidence that disappears into legal limbo, the perpetrators who escape consequences through wealth and connections. I still work maintenance, but in a different building now. Sometimes I hear voices in the vents, and I have to remind myself that most of them are just normal sounds. Pipes settling, air moving through ducts, conversations bleeding through thin walls. But I still listen carefully, just in case. Crime 8, I dropped a spoon behind the dresser and reached down blindly to grab it. My fingers brushed something hard, smooth, not metal. I pulled out a tooth. A molar, yellowed, human, not chipped or broken, just clean and whole. I stared at it for a long time, then checked my own mouth as if that would help. I wrapped it in a tissue and locked it in a drawer. The next morning, the drawer was open, and the tooth was gone. I lived alone. I had lived alone for 3 months since my roommate moved out. The landlord had handed me the keys, shaken my hand, and mentioned something about the previous tenant leaving suddenly. I hadn't thought much of it then. People move, life changes. But now, standing in my bedroom with a tissue full of nothing, I started thinking about things I had chosen to ignore. The apartment smelled wrong sometimes, not bad exactly, just unfamiliar, like someone else's laundry detergent mixed with something medicinal. I had blamed it on the old building, the shared ventilation system, but the smell was strongest near the dresser where I found the tooth. I called the landlord. His voice sounded different when I mentioned the previous tenant, careful. He said the person had paid rent on time, kept to themselves, left without notice. When I asked for a forwarding address, he claimed he didn't have one. When I asked why someone would leave a tooth behind a dresser, he hung up. The building had thin walls. I could hear my neighbors arguing, cooking, watching television. But I realized I had never heard anything from the apartment directly below mine. I knocked on their door, no answer. The mailbox downstairs had no name on it, just the apartment number. I asked the neighbor across the hall about the people downstairs. She looked at me strangely and said no one had lived there for over a year. I went back to my apartment and moved the dresser completely away from the wall. The hardwood floor underneath was cleaner than the rest of the room, as if someone had scrubbed it recently. But there were small stains that looked like they had been there much longer, dark spots that wouldn't come up no matter how hard I scrubbed. I found more things, a prescription bottle behind the radiator with the label torn off, a single earring under the bathroom sink, a photograph tucked inside an old book on the shelf, a family photo with one person's face carefully scratched out. The scratches were deep, deliberate, angry. The photo bothered me most. The remaining faces looked happy, normal. A kitchen table, birthday cake, paper plates. But someone had taken the time to destroy one person's image completely. I held the photo up to the light, trying to make out any details of the erased face. All I could see were the scratch marks and a hint of dark hair around the edges. I started asking questions around the neighborhood. The coffee shop owner remembered my predecessor. Quiet person, always ordered the same drink, always paid in cash. But something had changed near the end. They had started looking over their shoulder, asking odd questions about the back exit, whether anyone had been asking about them. The postal worker mentioned that mail had piled up for weeks before anyone noticed. Official letters, bills, personal correspondence, all returned to sender eventually. But there had been other mail too, packages with no return address, letters in handwriting that looked angry, urgent. Those had disappeared. I found a business card wedged behind the bathroom mirror, a dental office across town. I called them, explained I was trying to reach my predecessor about something they had left behind. The receptionist's voice became cautious when I mentioned the address. She put me on hold for a long time, then came back and said they couldn't discuss patient information. But before she hung up, she said something that made my skin crawl. If you find anything else, you should probably call the police. I didn't call the police, not yet. Instead, I went to the dental office. I sat in the waiting room for 2 hours, watching people come and go, listening to the sounds of drilling and suction. When the dentist finally had a break, I approached him directly. I described the tooth, the apartment, the strange circumstances. His face went pale. He asked me to follow him to his office. He pulled out a file, thick with papers and x-rays. He showed me images of dental work, extensive and expensive. Crowns, implants, bridges. Someone had spent a lot of money on their teeth. someone who had missed their last several appointments without explanation. The dentist told me about the final visit. His patient had seemed frightened, paranoid. They had asked strange questions about dental records, whether teeth could be identified, whether certain procedures could be traced. The dentist had been concerned enough to make notes. His patient had paid in cash for everything, never used insurance, never provided emergency contacts. I asked to see the file. The dentist hesitated, then showed me the name on the folder. It was a name I didn't recognize, but something about it seemed familiar, like I had seen it somewhere recently. I asked if I could make a copy of the information. He shook his head and closed the file quickly. Walking home, I realized where I had seen that name. It was on one of the pieces of mail that had been returned to sender. I had thrown it away, but the garbage was still sitting by the curb. I dug through banana peels and coffee grounds until I found the envelope. The return address was from a law office in another state. I called the law office. The secretary was reluctant to talk, but when I mentioned the name and said I was trying to locate this person about an inheritance matter, she became more helpful. She told me the person I was looking for had been involved in a dispute with family members. Something about money, accusations, restraining orders. The case had been dropped when their client disappeared. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the tooth, the cleaned floor, the scratched out face in the photograph. I thought about someone living in my apartment, becoming increasingly paranoid, missing dental appointments, hiding from family members. I thought about the medicinal smell and the business card behind the mirror. I got up and searched the apartment more thoroughly. Behind the kitchen cabinet, I found a small notebook. The pages were filled with names, addresses, phone numbers. Some entries were crossed out violently. Others had dates next to them like appointments or deadlines. One page had the same phrase written over and over. They found me, they found me, they found me. The last entry in the notebook was my current address, written in different handwriting. Cleaner, more careful. Below it, someone had drawn a small tooth. I sat on my couch holding the notebook, understanding finally why the drawer had been open in the morning, why the tooth was gone, why I sometimes felt like someone else had been in my apartment while I was at work. I wasn't the first person to find that tooth, and I probably wouldn't be the last. The next morning there was a new smell in the apartment, medicinal but stronger, and when I checked the drawer where I had found the notebook, it was empty too, but there was something else, a new tooth different from the first, smaller, sharper, still warm. I packed my things and left that day. I never told the landlord I was moving. I just disappeared like my predecessor had, like someone else probably would after me. Some apartments don't let you leave. They just pass you along to the next person and the next, carrying their secrets with them like a virus. The tooth is still with me, though. I keep it in my pocket now, and sometimes I can feel it moving. Crime 9, I was vacuuming when the nozzle caught on the edge of the hallway rug. It flipped up just enough to expose a corner of the floor I hadn't seen before because it wasn't floor. It was plywood, freshly nailed down, square and unnatural. My hands shook as I pulled the rug aside. The boards were lighter than the rest of the hardwood, new. Someone had sealed off a hole, but I didn't ask for repairs. I didn't authorize anything, and underneath something scratched. The sound was faint but deliberate, like fingernails on wood. I pressed my ear to the boards and heard it again, a scraping that made my skin crawl. The scratching stopped when I moved, resumed when I stayed still. Whatever was down there knew I was listening. I called the maintenance company. The woman on the phone spoke in a monotone voice that felt rehearsed. She said they'd completed emergency repairs while I was away, structural damage that couldn't wait. When I asked about documentation, she put me on hold. The muzak played the same 4 bars over and over until I hung up, but I'd never given them keys. I'd never been away for more than a few hours. The scratching grew louder that night. I lay in bed counting the rhythm. 3 short scrapes, pause, 3 long ones, pause, 3 short again. It felt like code, like someone trying to communicate. I grabbed a flashlight and went back to the hallway. The plywood was warm under my palm, warmer than the surrounding floor. The scratching stopped the moment I touched it. I started asking questions. The neighbor across the hall had noticed workers coming and going while I was at the office. She described them as quiet, efficient, carrying equipment she couldn't identify. When I showed her my empty mailbox, she frowned. She was sure she'd seen repair notices posted on my door, but there were no notices now, no paperwork, no evidence of any approved work. The building superintendent avoided my calls. When I cornered him near the elevator, his eyes wouldn't meet mine. He mumbled about insurance requirements and emergency protocols, but his hands trembled as he spoke. He knew something. Everyone seemed to know something I didn't. I found the receipt in my kitchen drawer, a receipt I'd never seen before, dated the same week as the supposed repairs. It was for a large quantity of lime, industrial grade, purchased with my credit card. But I'd never bought lime. I'd never been to that store. My signature on the receipt looked wrong, too neat, too practiced. The scratching became more frequent, sometimes during the day, sometimes deep into the night. I started recording it on my phone, playing it back at different speeds. The pattern was always the same, 3 short, 3 long, 3 short. When I played it backwards, it sounded almost like a voice, like someone trying to form words through the wood. I called the credit card company. The customer service representative pulled up my account and confirmed the lime purchase. She also mentioned another charge from that week, a rental fee for excavation equipment. Heavy machinery, she said, the kind used for digging. The rental lasted exactly 3 days. My sleep became fragmented. I drift off only to wake to the sound of scratching, sometimes so loud it seemed to come from inside the walls. I started leaving glasses of water on the hallway floor, testing for vibrations. Every morning, the water had tiny ripples, as if something below was moving, trying to get out. The building's maintenance logs were public record. I spent hours in the municipal office, reading through work orders and permits. Nothing matched the dates or the description of work done in my apartment. But I found something else, a missing person report filed the same week as the repairs. A maintenance worker who'd failed to show up for his shift. The report was filed by his supervisor, who described him as reliable, punctual, someone who never missed work without calling. I went back to the hallway with a crowbar. The plywood was secured with screws now, not nails. Someone had been back, made the seal stronger. The scratching stopped the moment I touched the metal to the wood. I pressed harder, feeling the screw give slightly. Then I heard footsteps in the corridor outside. The superintendent stood in my doorway, his face pale. He asked what I was doing, but his voice lacked conviction. Behind him, 2 men in maintenance uniforms waited. I'd never seen them before, but they carried tools, official-looking clipboards. They said they were there for a follow-up inspection, but they wouldn't look at the plywood. They wouldn't look at me. I backed away from the boards, crowbar still in my hand. The superintendent's eyes fixed on the tool, then on my face. He said something about protocol violations and unauthorized modifications. The men behind him stepped closer. I realized they weren't there to help me. They were there to stop me. That night I moved the rug back over the plywood. I unplugged the phone and turned off the lights. But the scratching continued, weaker now, like whatever was down there was losing strength. I sat in the dark, listening, until the sounds faded into silence. The next morning, the building superintendent knocked on my door. He handed me a notice of lease termination, effective immediately. He said there had been complaints about noise, about unauthorized renovations. His hands still shook when he spoke, but his voice was steady. he'd made his choice. I packed my belongings and left the key on the kitchen counter. As I walked down the hallway for the last time, I could swear I heard the scratching again, fainter now, desperate, but I kept walking. Sometimes the truth is too dangerous to uncover. Sometimes the only way to survive is to pretend you never heard anything at all. The rug stayed behind, covering whatever secret lay beneath. And somewhere in the city, a maintenance worker's family still waits for him to come home. Story 10. In the stillness of night, a mysterious parcel arrived, nestled within a plain envelope devoid of any sender's details. Enclosed within was a solitary brass key, its surface weathered by the passage of time. The homeowner, upon its discovery, found herself strangely drawn to the key, sensing a whisper of familiarity in its presence. Yet, as she ventured to test it within the confines of every lock she possessed, not a single mechanism yielded to its touch. It belonged to no door in her abode. Perplexity settled within her heart as she placed the key gently upon the coffee table, its mere presence invoking a response from the ancient grandfather clock that stood vigil in the hallway. A solitary hollow chime reverberated through the silent house, despite the clock having long succumbed to the tyranny of broken mechanisms. Sarah Miller, the homeowner, felt a shiver dance down her spine at this unearthly occurrence and promptly reported the peculiar incident to the local authorities. Initially met with skepticism, the responding officer attempted to assuage Sarah's concerns, attributing the key's arrival to a possible error in delivery. However, Sarah's intuition, a faint whisper of unease lingering in her soul, insisted that something was amiss. Reluctantly, the officer accepted the key as evidence, consigning it to a small evidence bag that would unwittingly become the linchpin of a harrowing investigation that would soon unfold. In due course, the case file found its way into the hands of Detective Robert Harmon, a seasoned investigator within the Special Victims Unit. With a gaze that seemed to pierce beyond the surface of things, Harmon harbored an instinct that whispered of the deceptive nature of seemingly benign beginnings. The brass key, resting unassumingly upon his desk, exuded an aura of disquiet that belied its unremarkable appearance. Delving into Sarah's background, the investigators found no blemish upon her history. A retired teacher, widowed with grown children living afar, Sarah appeared to be the epitome of innocence. The forensic team's examination yielded only Sarah's prints upon the key, the envelope offering no trace save for a nondescript postmark from a regional distribution center. The key itself, a standard Schlage, bore the marks of age and wear, hinting at a past obscured by shadows. A breakthrough materialized when Detective Harmon, driven by a hunch that tugged at the fringes of his consciousness, decided to cross-reference the key's unique bidding pattern with the department's database. An archived case from 7 years prior unveiled an identical pattern, a key linked to a storage unit where horrors unspeakable had lurked in the shadows. Blood-stained carpets, cutting implements, and images of unidentified women had populated the original investigation, which had faltered due to a lack of concrete evidence. Dusting off the long-forgotten case files, Harmon unearthed a tale of mystery and malevolence. The key had been associated with a storage unit rented under a false identity, shrouded in cash transactions and a veil of anonymity. The trail had grown cold, surveillance footage erased, and the suspect's identity a mere phantom in the wind. The photographs recovered depicted 5 women, their lifeless forms hauntingly serene, yet only 3 had been identified during the initial investigation, missing but never found, their fates sealed in uncertainty. Sarah, when confronted with the images, recognized none of the women, her anxiety mounting with each passing revelation. Bolstering her defenses, she fortified her home with new locks and a security system, the specter of fear casting a pall over her once tranquil existence. The question lingered, a riddle wrapped in enigma. Why had the key found its way to her, a messenger of dread from a past concealed in shadows? A fresh analysis of the original evidence unveiled a glimmer of hope amidst the darkness. The partial DNA sample, expanded and scrutinized through modern techniques, yielded a distant familial match, a second cousin twice removed from the elusive suspect. Peeling back the layers of genealogy, investigators homed in on Harold Jenkins, a former neighbor of Sarah's who had vanished without a trace 6 years prior. His elusive nature, marked by transient movements and unexplained absences, painted a portrait of a man adept at slipping through the cracks of society's watchful gaze. Further probing into Jenkins' past revealed a patchwork of disconnected employment stints, a nomadic existence punctuated by brief interludes of stability. His former abode, upon inspection, divulged no secrets, the neighbors' recollections painting a picture of a man who had blended seamlessly into the backdrop of suburban life, a shadow among shadows, unnoticed until the light of truth revealed his hidden malevolence. The burning question, a riddle that defied easy answers, haunted the investigators. Why this key, sent now to Sarah Miller? Harmon postulated theories that hovered on the fringes of comprehension, a trophy, a warning, an invitation cloaked in macabre purpose. The manhunt for Jenkins escalated, his shadow stretching across the nation as law enforcement agencies mobilized to apprehend the elusive figure lurking in the periphery of society. The true extent of horror unfurled as authorities delved into a secluded cabin linked to Jenkins' deceased mother. Beneath the floorboards, a hidden chamber lay in wait, accessible only through a concealed trapdoor. On meticulously arranged shelves, rows of brass keys stood sentinel, each bearing a name and date upon a small tag, an eerie catalog of lives intertwined with unspeakable tragedy. 5 keys aligned with the women from the photographs, their stories now woven into the tapestry of horror that Jenkins had meticulously crafted. As forensic teams combed the earth behind the cabin, a grim tableau emerged: human remains, silent witnesses to the atrocities that had transpired in the shadowy realm that Jenkins had inhabited. The excavation unfolded like a macabre dance, revealing the grim truth that lay buried beneath layers of deceit and deception. Sarah, sheltered under the vigilant eye of protection, watched as the tendrils of darkness unfurled, reaching out to claim justice for the fallen and closure for the grieving. The press, hungry for sensation, christened Jenkins with a moniker that reverberated across the nation, the Keymaster, a title that encapsulated the essence of his twisted legacy. Fear gripped the community, tendrils of dread seeping into the collective consciousness as the realization dawned that monsters sometimes wore the guise of ordinary men, their deeds obscured by the veil of normalcy. In the heart of the wilderness, where shadows danced upon the canvas of nature, a wildlife photographer's lens captured a fleeting glimpse of Jenkins, a solitary figure traversing the rugged terrain, a specter of darkness moving with purposeful intent. The image, grainy and indistinct, served as a beacon for law enforcement, guiding them to the heart of the manhunt that had gripped the nation in its icy clutches. The final act played out in a crescendo of tension and tragedy, culminating in a confrontation that sealed Jenkins' fate. As he sought refuge within the confines of an abandoned tower, the echoes of his crimes reverberated through the silent corridors, a ghostly testament to the horrors he had wrought. Negotiations faltered, pleas for surrender falling upon deaf ears as Jenkins, ensnared by his own malevolence, chose a path of finality. When the tower's doors swung open to reveal the truth that lay within, Jenkins lay still, his life extinguished by his own hand. Beside him, a journal whispered of his sins, a silent witness to the darkness that had consumed his soul. A single brass key, identical to the one Sarah had received, bore silent testimony to the malevolence that had coursed through his veins, a harbinger of despair and destruction. Within a waterproof container, a trove of evidence awaited photographs, maps marking burial sites, and personal effects torn from the victims who had crossed paths with Jenkins in their final moments. A meticulous chronicle of horror lay unveiled, a stark reminder of the fragility of innocence in a world stained by the shadows of evil. The journal's final entry, a chilling missive addressed to Sarah, spoke of unseen eyes that had watched her, of a darkness that had lurked in the shadows, biding its time until the moment of revelation. "You never noticed me," it whispered, "but I noticed everything about you." The key, a symbol of twisted admiration, a token of a predator's macabre affection, had found its mark in Sarah's hands, a harbinger of the storm that had swept through her life. The subsequent investigation unearthed a tapestry of horror, a mosaic of tragedy that spanned decades. 32 victims, their lives cut short by a man consumed by darkness, found justice in the wake of Jenkins' demise. Families, long haunted by the specter of loss, found closure in the bitter truth that emerged from the shadows. Sarah, forever changed by the brush of malevolence that had grazed her life, never returned to the sanctuary of her home. The grandfather clock's hollow chime a haunting echo of the horrors that had unfolded within its walls. The facade of normalcy, shattered by the revelation of evil lurking beneath, cast a pall over the community, a reminder that monsters sometimes walked among them, hidden in plain sight. In the hallowed halls of academia, researchers pored over Jenkins' writings, seeking insights into the twisted minds that lurked in the shadows of society. Their quest for understanding, a beacon of hope in a sea of darkness, sought to identify the signs of malevolence before they could blossom into deeds of horror. And in an evidence locker, a collection of brass keys lay dormant, silent witnesses to the lives that had been snuffed out by a man consumed by darkness. Each key, a symbol of lost innocence, a testament to the fragility of life in a world tainted by the shadows of evil, stood as a silent sentinel to the horrors that had transpired, a grim reminder of the darkness that sometimes hides behind the mask of normalcy. Story 11. The real estate listing didn't mention a basement. The blueprints were void of any indication of its existence. Yet when the family peeled back the old carpet, a door emerged, concealed beneath. A hefty, rusted handle adorned it, requiring the strength of 3 to pry it ajar. A musty breath of air ascended to meet them, heavy with the aroma of moist earth. Descending steps beckoned into darkness. Storage was expected, yet a chair awaited beneath a single swaying light bulb. And on the wall behind, a series of photographs of them, snapshots captured from within their own abode. The Mercer family had settled into the suburban dwelling during the winter, when the shadows lingered and the skeletal trees stood stark against the icy sky. They saw charm in the 2-story abode with its weathered siding and groaning floors, but they hadn't fathomed the depths of history the house harbored, or the violent collision it would have with their present. Detective Sarah Connors and her partner arrived at the scene, the crime scene unit already cordoning off the area with fluttering yellow tape. Mrs. Mercer had made the distress call, her voice quivering as she recounted the hidden chamber beneath their living space. "We must document everything before anyone else descends," Connors directed, donning latex gloves with seasoned skill. Camera flashes pierced the dimness as the forensic team captured the eerie tableau. The wooden steps groaned underfoot. The basement, compact like a standard bedroom, bore concrete walls painted a drab gray. The solitary chair was fixed to the floor at the room's heart. Above, the stark bulb cast angular shadows, revolving slowly in an unseen breeze. Yet it was the wall of photographs that seized attention, 37 images meticulously arranged in a timeline. These date back almost a month, Connor's partner remarked, noting the timestamps inscribed on the prints. Look here, Mrs. Mercer napping on the sofa. Mr. Mercer at the dining table, the kids in their rooms. The investigation unveiled no signs of forced entry, no shattered windows or tampered locks. The security system had remained silent. Nothing was pilfered. Privacy was the sole casualty, along with any semblance of security the family once held. Forensics detected multiple fingerprints throughout the basement, many belonging to past homeowners. Records disclosed the house had changed hands 6 times in the last 10 years, each family departing within a year, selling at dwindling prices. None had divulged the basement's existence. We must converse with every previous owner, Connors instructed, scanning her notepad. The case grew graver as they delved into history. Property records bore discrepancies, blueprints altered between sales, permits submitted then retracted, inspection reports with redacted sections. A breakthrough emerged during an interview with the contractor who had revamped the house 7 years earlier. His complexion blanched at the sight of the basement photos. That room is fictitious, he asserted, his hands quivering. I gutted that place to its core. There was no basement, no door, nothing beneath the living room save soil and concrete. Digital forensics extracted data from the concealed memory card within the light fixture. A trove of additional images populated their evidence boards, not just of the Mercers, but of previous inhabitants. Children slumbering, parents bickering, intimate scenes, mundane rituals, all captured by an unauthorized observer. The case darkened when audio files were unearthed from a weatherproof box buried in the basement corner. Voice recordings from the master bedroom, the kitchen, the living area. The audio quality implied sophisticated microphones secreted throughout the house, though none were found initially. We must dismantle every wall, Connors urged, her tone taut with urgency. Inspect the air ducts, light fixtures, electrical outlets. The perpetrator has been surveilling these families for years. Beyond the photograph wall, investigators stumbled upon a slender corridor leading to a monitoring station. A desk, a chair, a laptop linked to a network of wireless cameras, and a journal brimming with meticulous notes on each family that had inhabited the residence. Their routines, their schedules, their disputes, their vulnerabilities. The script mirrored samples from the property's original builder, a man known as Edward Kelvin. Records indicated his demise during the house's construction, a detail that raised suspicion as the inquiry advanced. No death certificate existed. No funeral arrangements were recorded. Edward Kelvin had vanished from official records. The journal's final entries grew erratic. Phrases like "they never cast eyes downward" and "they never acknowledge me" recurred. The conclusive page bore a solitary sentence: "The next family arrives tomorrow." Fingerprint analysis validated what detectives had begun to theorize. Edward Kelvin had never departed the house he erected. He had retreated into its concealed recesses, erecting a network of observation points to spy on the families who assumed they dwelled in solitude. The pursuit spanned 3 days. They unearthed him coiled within a crawlspace amid the second-floor chambers, his frame gaunt and sinewy, adapted to navigating the narrow passages he had fashioned within the walls. His gaze blinked against the beams of light, unaccustomed to direct illumination. During interrogation, Kelvin spoke of the families as if they were actors in his private drama. He recounted watching them with the detached gaze of a scientist examining specimens. He had never intruded, never looted, never interfered directly with their lives. He had merely observed, recorded, documented. "They welcomed me," he informed investigators, his voice subdued and rational. "They signed the deeds. They became mine." The psychological assessment determined Kelvin suffered from severe delusions, viewing himself as the custodian of the house rather than a trespasser. The families were transient guests in what he perceived as his eternal abode. The Mercers never returned to the property. Like their predecessors, they deserted their possessions, salvaging only what fit in luggage. The house stood vacant as the legal process progressed. The trial unveiled the extent of Kelvin's surveillance network, hidden chambers accessible solely through crawl spaces, observation points integrated into the structure, meticulously devised before the first brick was laid. The house had been fashioned as a voyeuristic apparatus from its inception, its residents unwitting players in Kelvin's obsessive documentation. When the jury rendered their verdict, Kelvin displayed no reaction. He had already sought refuge within the labyrinth of his mind, where he could still traverse unseen through the passages of the house that existed now solely in memory. The property was ultimately razed, its foundation excavated and filled. Yet for the families who had dwelled there, the violation endured. They were haunted not by what was taken from them, but by what they had been oblivious to, observing, eavesdropping, recording their most intimate moments from within walls they had entrusted to shield them. Sometimes, in hushed instants, they found themselves glancing upward at vents, light fixtures, the junctures of walls and ceilings, pondering if they were genuinely alone now, pondering if they ever had been. Story 12. The old Polaroid held secrets long forgotten, a snapshot frozen in time. Faces smiled, candles flickered, a scene of ordinary joy. Yet within the box of old memories passed down to the daughter, a chilling discovery awaited. Amongst the familiar faces, a figure lurked in the shadows, a man unseen before. Standing just beyond the glow of the candles, he seemed to inch closer with each passing photo. Sarah Winters stumbled upon this unsettling collection while clearing out her mother's attic after the funeral. The box labeled Memories should have brought comfort, a glimpse into happier days. Instead, it unveiled a haunting mystery. In the first photo, he was a mere silhouette at the edge, a dark presence during her childhood birthday party. By the second, he had crept inside, and in the third, he loomed behind her uncle, unnoticed by all. Trembling, Sarah called her father, seeking answers to the enigma that haunted the faded photographs. "Dad, who is this man in the background of every picture?" Silence lingered before a sharp inhale. "What man? Only family should be there," her father's voice quivered. Detective Marcus Reed listened intently as Sarah laid out the eerie progression before him. Rain tapped against the windows, casting a somber ambience in the precinct. His weathered hands traced the photos, his gaze piercing through the mystery. No one recognized him, he inquired, his interest piqued by the enigmatic figure's steady approach in each image. As Sarah arranged the photos in sequence, a pattern emerged, a dark presence moving closer to the unsuspecting children. In the final photo, he stood just behind Sarah's childhood self, a ghostly hand reaching out, almost touching her shoulder. Reed pondered aloud, suggesting the photographer's involvement, though doubt lingered in his tone. Sarah clarified that her mother had taken the photos, setting the timer before joining the frame. Copies were made, a case file opened, and investigations launched, yet no one recalled the mysterious man. Facial recognition failed to unmask him, his form strategically obscured in every shot, as if aware of the lens capturing his stealthy presence. The breakthrough came with enhanced images, revealing distinct features: a scar, a ring, a glimpse of a face previously shrouded in darkness. Dental records provided a match, linking the figure to Robert Keller, a vanished maintenance worker tied to unsolved child abductions from years gone by. Keller's connection to the vacation property where Sarah's birthday transpired raised chilling possibilities. Small items unearthed at his former residence hinted at long-buried horrors, connecting missing children to his sinister past. Alone in her apartment, Sarah stared at the photos that had unraveled a web of concealed terrors. The detective's call confirmed the identification of remains near a vacation property, bringing closure to a grieving family. As she gazed at the final birthday photo, the figure lingered in the shadows, a specter of darkness amidst the family's joyous celebration. The revelation tied together decades-old mysteries, shedding light on a hidden predator finally brought to justice. Sarah returned the damning evidence to its box, a reminder of the unseen dangers lurking within captured moments. The phantom figure, invisible yet ever-present, had moved through celebrations undetected, leaving behind a trail of darkness and frozen time. And as the truth surfaced, families found closure and answers long sought, their prayers answered in unexpected ways. The shadow in the photographs had emerged from obscurity, his legacy of fear unveiled at last. Story 13. The gentle current whispered secrets as it caressed the glassy, still water that morning. The fisherman's eyes, heavy with sleep, almost missed the sight of a mysterious suitcase bobbing near the shore. Initially mistaken for discarded clothes, the truth revealed itself as he drew closer, the pungent stench weaving its way into his senses, thick, suffocating, undeniable. The case, entwined in chains that bore the marks of time, held secrets far darker than mere garments. When authorities pried it open, it wasn't fabric they found, but strands of hair, fingers frozen in a ghostly grasp. And at the very bottom, a chilling note awaited. This isn't the first. Detective Sarah Mercer, her features shrouded in contemplation, delicately pressed a handkerchief to her nose as she surveyed the grim tableau before her. The victim, a woman in her mid-30s with dark locks and pallid skin now kissed by the water's touch, lay in silent repose. The meticulous pathologist meticulously documented every detail, a silent witness to the final moments of a life extinguished too soon. Yet what struck Mercer most profoundly was not the manner of disposal, but the eerie attention to detail lavished upon the victim: manicured nails, freshly styled hair, clad in garments of opulence. She wasn't meant for this place, Mercer mused, her gaze following the rhythmic dance of the water against the muddy shoreline. She was prepared, almost revered. The victim was identified as Catherine Walsh, a real estate maven renowned for her expertise in selling upscale properties. Divorced, childless, she dwelled alone in a neighborhood of affluence. Colleagues painted a portrait of ambition, precision, and discretion. Her absence was noted by her assistant, who spoke with conviction during interrogation. She would never miss such a momentous showing. The sale was to be her crowning achievement. Investigative tendrils snaked through Walsh's modernist abode, a sanctuary of pristine perfection. Designer furnishings stood guard in silent vigil, every surface a testament to immaculate care. Even the refrigerator harbored meticulously arranged meals, each labeled with precision. Yet a crack in the faade emerged within her private domain, an office drawer slightly askew. Nestled within, a leather-bound journal awaited discovery. The final entry whispered of unseen eyes he watches once more. The same vehicle, different plates. A digital breadcrumb trail uncovered in Walsh's emails unveiled a haunting pattern: messages from unknown senders bearing the same ominous refrain, "I see your perfection." A synchronized chorus of intrusion, a symphony of unease. Her online footsteps led to inquiries into home security and self-defense, a silent plea for sanctuary from unseen malevolence. Mercer, drawing invisible threads between the disparate clues, confided in her partner, "Our predator is no mere killer. This is a ritual, a ceremony of obsession." The break in the case arrived from an unexpected source, an astute pawnshop proprietor who recognized Walsh's emerald necklace among his wares. The culprit, a figure of unassuming normalcy, Michael Linden, a custodian of silence. Surveillance footage wove a tapestry of his movements within Walsh's domain, a specter haunting her steps in the shadows of familiarity. Linden's dwelling, a canvas of mundanity, revealed a darker truth as investigators unearthed a gallery of stolen moments photographs capturing Walsh and others in stolen intimacy. Some faces marred in crimson, a testament to his twisted calculus. Walsh was but one of many. Behind a veil of secrecy within his closet lay a shrine to his conquests. Trinkets of the fallen, each a relic of stolen essence, a brush bearing strands of hair, tissues imprinted with lipstick, keys to lives extinguished. Pages of diaries chronicling lives lived in ignorance, lives ended in agony. The interrogation chamber echoed with a chill as Linden, a figure of serene composure, met their gaze. His voice, a monotone echo of detachment, finally broke the silence. They were marred by imperfection. They paraded perfection, but I saw through the veneer. Catherine's desk bore chaos. Her lipstick missed a mark. Her perfection was a lie. The hunt for the two unnamed figures referenced in his cryptic note led investigators to remote corners where two more suitcases surfaced. Within, echoes of Walsh's visage, a trinity of souls bound by Linden's twisted vision of correction. Real estate agents, bearers of the fa-de of perfection. In the hushed confines of the courtroom, Linden sat wordless, his visage a mask of indifference as the prosecution unfurled his crimes. A shadow in the night, he had stalked his prey with precision, a maestro orchestrating their final movements. Families of the fallen bore silent witness as justice was meted a lifetime behind bars, devoid of reprieve. For Mercer, the final chapter closed with a sense of unease, questions lingering like shadows in the dark. What drove Linden to fixate on these women, to seek absolution in their demise? What darkness within himself sought solace in their suffering? The river, an ancient witness to the ebb and flow of time, bore no trace of the tragedy that had unfolded within its embrace. Yet in the precinct, atop Mercer's desk lay silent sentinels, the chilling diaries of a predator in plain sight. A reminder that behind every smile, every fa-de of normalcy, lurks the potential for shadows to awaken, for darkness to descend. And in the quiet heartbeats of the night, the most dangerous predators often wear the guise of the familiar, waiting for a single flaw to unveil their true nature. Story 14, the town held a secret, a house forgotten at the edge of the woods. Its presence was a whisper, a shadow in the minds of locals, its history lost to time. The house stood alone, a relic of forgotten days, its windows dark, its porch weary from the weight of years. No one laid claim to it, no one knew who had raised its walls. It sat there, silent and mysterious, until a group of wandering hikers stumbled upon its hidden truth. Among the hikers was Mason Wright, a young man whose fate intertwined with the enigma of the house. As they drew near, their eyes caught sight of something peculiar, names carved into the wooden siding, etched deep as if to warn trespassers. And at the very bottom, fresh and untouched, was a name that sent shivers through the group, a name unknown to them all except for the one who recognized it with a trembling voice, "That's mine." The call came in the dead of night, a simple report of trespassing. Mason's voice, tinged with disbelief, recounted the chilling discovery of his own name etched into the abandoned house. Officers arrived expecting a mere case of mischief, but what they found defied all logic. Detective Sarah Keller stepped into the darkness of the forest, her flashlight cutting through the gloom to reveal the weathered facade of the house. The names, 27 in total, lined the wall like a haunting memorial. Some names had faded with time, barely visible against the aged wood, while others remained sharp as if freshly carved. And there, at the end of the list, was Mason Wright, the cut still raw with the scent of fresh wood. "I've never been here before," Mason declared, his breath forming mist in the cold night air. "I don't understand how my name ended up here." The investigation unfolded, leading the team down a path of unsettling discoveries that sent chills down their spines. Background checks on the names revealed a harrowing truth. Each one belonged to a person who had gone missing while hiking alone over the past 40 years. Some cases had grown cold, others remained open, but all shared a haunting similarity: they had vanished without a trace in these very woods. Forensic experts meticulously documented the carvings, studying the depths, the techniques, the weathering. The oldest name, Rebecca Hansen, harkened back to a disappearance decades ago, a young woman lost to the forest, leaving only a single boot by a stream as a clue. As the investigation deepened, suspicion turned to Mason and his friends. Emily Chen's photographs unveiled a chilling presence lurking in the background of their hike, a figure unseen by their eyes but captured by the lens. Despite their claims of solitude on the trail, the evidence spoke otherwise. The house's interior revealed a macabre truth: personal items of the missing hikers meticulously arranged as if in a twisted shrine. Watches, backpacks, cameras, all labeled with the names from the wall outside. Bloodstains hidden beneath layers of dust hinted at a darker tale, a story of violence erased but never forgotten. Mason's world spiraled into paranoia as he reported strange occurrences haunting his every step. Whispers in the night, phantom footprints, shadowy figures stalking his every move. The hunt for answers led to a reclusive hunter, Victor Blackwood, whose journal unveiled a chilling obsession with human prey. The manhunt for Blackwood spanned across jurisdictions, a desperate search for a predator hidden in the shadows of the forest. But as the net closed in, Mason vanished without a trace, leaving only a cryptic message on his bedroom wall, a grim prophecy of the hunter becoming the hunted. The investigation took a sinister turn as a new name appeared, a name belonging to the lead forensic technician who had delved too deeply into the house's secrets. The trap was set, surveillance tightened, but when the figure emerged from the forest, it slipped through their grasp like a ghost, leaving behind only whispers of dread. To this day, the house stands under watchful eyes, a silent sentinel to the mysteries that dwell within its walls. Mason and the technician remain lost to the shadows, their fates intertwined with a darkness that defies understanding. The names on the wall echo through the minds of investigators, a chilling reminder of the horrors that lurk in the heart of the woods, where silence speaks louder than words. Story 15, the aged envelope with its yellowed edges and fresh stamp, was a curious sight. The detective, Sarah Morgan, handled it with care, sensing a hidden tale waiting to unfold. Inside, a single sheet of paper held a message typed in haste, the words confessing, "I am sorry for what I did." As Morgan read, a faint scent of iron wafted from the damp paper, raising the hairs on her neck. A reddish smear along the bottom edge caught her eye, not ink, but human blood. Swiftly, she secured the incriminating letter in an evidence bag, its significance unraveling before her eyes. The forensics team's analysis confirmed Morgan's suspicions. The blood on the letter matched DNA from an unsolved homicide case that had tormented the department for years. The victim, Rebecca Warren, a young journalist, had met a brutal end in her apartment, stabbed multiple times. Her missing laptop and scattered notes hinted at a connection between the attack and an unfinished story. Despite tireless efforts, the case had grown cold until this mysterious letter arrived at the precinct, addressed simply to the Homicide Division. Examining the paper and envelope revealed few clues, just faint smudges hinting at gloved hands. The postmark, however, provided a rare light after months of dead ends. Morgan gathered her team, the weight of the unsolved case heavy in the air. She pinned the letter to the board, declaring, "This changes everything. Our killer shows remorse." Detective James Chen, her steadfast partner, offered a different perspective, suggesting the blood could be a cruel charade, a taunt. Tracing the unique typewriter patterns to a long-discontinued model, the team embarked on a quest through antique shops and collectors. Simultaneously, they delved into Rebecca's life, uncovering her fearless pursuit of truth and justice. Her investigation into a wealthy, politically connected family unearthed a web of deceit and betrayal. Interviewing Rebecca's boyfriend, Michael Barnes, revealed subtle shifts in his demeanor, hinting at withheld secrets. As the investigation deepened, a second letter arrived, echoing the first but with more damning details. The path led to the mansion of the deceased patriarch, where suspicions fell on the eldest son, Richard, and his staged alibi. A breakthrough came with the revelation of custom stationery linked to the family's youngest daughter, Eleanor, and a hidden room in Richard's home containing incriminating evidence. The tangled web extended to financial transactions between Richard and Michael, shedding light on a sinister plot to silence Rebecca permanently. Eleanor's crucial recording exposed Richard's true intentions, leading to his arrest. Despite his protests of innocence, the evidence stacked against him crumbled his defense. The jury's swift verdict sealed his fate, a bittersweet resolution for Rebecca's grieving parents. The blood-stained letters, haunting relics of a calculated crime, served as a stark reminder that guilt, whether genuine or feigned, can unveil the darkest truths. Rebecca Warren's case stood as a poignant lesson in detective work, showcasing that sometimes the key to unlocking a mystery lies not in high-tech tools, but in the weight of a guilty conscience, revealed through the ink of an old typewriter. Story 16. In the realm where reality blurs with the whispers of the unknown, a tale unfolds from the depths of a forgotten phone call. It began as a mere echo of static and muted sounds, a fleeting moment that almost slipped past unnoticed by the operator. But then a voice emerged from the void, a woman's voice, tinged with urgency and fear, barely audible yet undeniably present. "He's here." And then silence descended like a veil over the unseen speaker. The number traced back to an empty house, its disheveled facade a silent witness to the passage of time. No forced entry, no disturbances in the stillness that lingered within its walls. Yet in the dimly lit kitchen, a phone lay abandoned on the dusty counter, its screen casting a soft, eerie glow. The call had transpired mere minutes before, a ghostly echo of a presence long departed. Detective Morgan Reed found herself ensnared by the enigma, replaying the haunting message on the phone for the 5th time. The whispered words lingered in the air, a spectral reminder of a reality askew. The house, once belonging to the Sullivan family, stood as a monument to a past consumed by flames. Following a tragic fire that ravaged the West Wing, the Sullivans had sought refuge elsewhere, leaving the house to solitude. The caretaker's visits had been the only interruptions in its silent vigil, attesting to the absence of human touch. Background check on the number, Morgan inquired of her partner, Detective Walsh. The revelation that it belonged to Catherine Sullivan, the deceased daughter, cast a shadow of perplexity over the case. A woman long departed, yet her voice echoed from beyond the veil of mortality. The phone, a relic of the past, held secrets that defied logic. Dust settled undisturbed save for the spot where the phone rested, a curious anomaly in the stillness of the abandoned abode. Forensic scrutiny yielded no tangible leads, no fingerprints to trace, no footprints to follow. The mystery deepened as the recording of those 11 seconds of static and whispers became the focal point of their inquiry, a riddle wrapped in the echoes of a spectral voice. Voice analysis echoed eerie truths, confirming the identity of the speaker as Catherine Sullivan with an unsettling certainty. The timestamp of the call mirrored the moment of her untimely demise, a chilling synchronization that defied rational explanation. Interviews with those acquainted with Catherine unveiled fragments of a life now shrouded in the mists of the past. Her father, remarried and bewildered her mother, haunted by the spectral voice of her lost daughter. Mark Jennings, the boyfriend entwined in the tapestry of her final days, stood at the center of the enigma. Alibis crumbled under scrutiny, alibis woven with threads of deceit and evasion. The echoes of a journal, unearthed from the depths of memory, whispered of a love twisted into shadows, of fear lurking in the corners of a once-idyllic romance. The truth, a specter waiting to be unveiled, lay buried beneath layers of deception and manipulation. A journal, a silent witness to the unraveling of a life, spoke volumes in its inked confessions. The final entry, a harbinger of tragedy, bore the weight of unspoken fears and a foreboding sense of impending doom. As the pieces of the puzzle aligned, a sinister truth emerged from the shadows, an orchestrated dance of deceit and betrayal. The revelation of Catherine's buried phone, a relic of her final moments, unearthed a tale of treachery and manipulation. Deleted texts whispered of a sinister pursuit, of a life extinguished in the shadows of obsession. The truth, once buried, rose to the surface, unveiling a narrative of horror and despair. The phantom call, a macabre charade orchestrated by a malevolent hand, sought to rewrite the past in a veil of deception. As the tendrils of justice tightened their grip, Mark's facade crumbled, revealing the darkness that lurked within. A shrine to a lost love, a gallery of stolen memories, a testament to a mind unhinged by obsession. The echoes of the past reverberated in the hollow chambers of the abandoned house, a symphony of voices silenced by the hands of a murderer. In the hush of the courtroom, justice found its mark, a verdict rendered in the echoes of a voice long gone. Catherine's mother clutched the journal to her chest, a bittersweet solace in the face of tragedy. The phone, now a relic of a dark chapter closed, whispered no more in the confines of its evidence locker. Yet in the stillness of the night, officers swore they heard its phantom ring, a reminder of a voice that refused to be silenced. Catherine's story, a tapestry woven with threads of sorrow and resilience, lingered in the shadows as a testament to the enduring power of truth. Not a ghostly tale of the supernatural, but a whispered reminder that even in death, the voice of the silenced will find a way to speak, a solemn requiem echoing through the corridors of memory. Story 17. Renovations always lead to uncovering mysterious things: old newspapers, forgotten trinkets, faded photographs. But for Sarah and Michael, the couple who embarked on renovating their newly acquired Victorian-era home, the discovery beneath the floorboards went beyond the ordinary. As they lifted the worn wood, a neatly folded letter emerged, its paper fragile and its ink worn. The message, though aged, was crystal clear: "Don't trust the one who knocked." Before they could process the unsettling finding, 3 sharp knocks reverberated through the empty house, sending shivers down their spines. Detective Alina Reed, with her seasoned partner, arrived on the scene. The exposed floorboards revealed a hidden cavity below where the ominous note had been concealed. Reed, with hands weathered by years of investigating, retrieved the note cautiously, aware of the inevitable contamination caused by the couple's touch. The fear etched on Sarah and Michael's faces seemed genuine as they recounted the chilling sound of knocking. Background checks painted a picture of an ordinary couple newlyweds with stable lives and a pristine reputation. However, the house held a darker past. Previously owned by the Hargrove family for generations, it stood vacant after the passing of the last resident, Margaret Hargrove, an elderly widow known for her solitude. Neighbors described Margaret as reclusive yet amiable, with no known enemies or suspicious circumstances surrounding her death, but a sense of unease lingered. Forensic analysis dated the cryptic note back 2 decades, hinting at distress and urgency in the handwriting possibly Margaret's. Reed delved deeper into the Hargroves' history, unearthing unsettling details. Franklin, Margaret's late husband, once a respected teacher and woodworker, had exhibited signs of paranoia in his final years. A former student recalled his erratic behavior, mentioning a mysterious figure watching him. A breakthrough surfaced during an interview with Margaret's sister, who revealed a chilling truth. Franklin's gambling debts had attracted the attention of a menacing collector who came knocking always 3 times. Margaret, fearful and desperate, had contemplated selling the house to settle the debts, but Franklin had stubbornly refused. Returning to the house with a forensic team, Reed's investigation led to a grim discovery beneath the foundation, a male skeleton wrapped in plastic bearing signs of violence. Dental records ruled out Franklin Hargrove, leading to the identification of Victor Mercer, a notorious loan shark and gambling collector who had vanished without a trace years ago. Piecing together forensic evidence and Margaret's hidden diaries, the truth emerged. Franklin, driven by fear and protection for his wife, had confronted Mercer, resulting in a fatal altercation. The walls of the crawlspace bore witness to a long-buried secret, unraveling the tragic events of the past. Margaret, haunted by guilt and fear, had lived out her days alone in the house, tormented by phantom knocks and a looming sense of dread. With the case finally closed and justice served, Sarah and Michael chose to part ways with the house, unable to bear its haunting legacy. The once charming Victorian home now stands abandoned, its renovations halted, as whispers circulate about eerie echoes of 3 distinct knocks in the dead of night. The note, a chilling artifact of the past, remains a silent reminder: don't trust the one who knocked. The mysteries surrounding Margaret, Franklin, and Mercer linger in the shadows, a testament to how some secrets remain buried even when the truth seems unveiled. Story 18. In the quiet of the old apartment, where pipes whispered secrets and floorboards murmured tales of the past, an unsettling presence lingered. The new tenant, with senses finely tuned to the unusual, detected a rhythm in the night, a steady, deliberate cadence that echoed from above, though she dwelled on the highest floor. One fateful evening, emboldened by curiosity mingled with fear, she raised a broomstick to tap upon the ceiling. The echoing footsteps ceased, swallowed by a heavy silence. Then, in the stillness, a single knock reverberated, a knock that originated from within the very confines of the ceiling. Sarah Coleman, the tenant, chose to keep the strange occurrence to herself, attributing it to the settling of the aging building, or perhaps a wayward creature seeking refuge in the hidden nooks of the attic space. Night after night, the methodical footfalls traversed the expanse above her, tracing unseen paths as she adapted, seeking solace in the blaring of her television and the solace of headphones to shield her from the unsettling presence that haunted her ceiling. Detective Morris was drawn into the enigma of the apartment when a diligent maintenance worker stumbled upon a concealed crawlspace during routine repairs. In the hallway outside Sarah's dwelling, A section of drywall gave way to reveal an uncharted passage that defied the building's plans. Within this clandestine realm, illuminated by a flickering flashlight, lay a hidden abode, a sanctuary of discarded wrappers, empty bottles, a stained blanket, and a weathered notebook. The superintendent, alarmed by the discovery, summoned the authorities. Detective Morris, accompanied by his partner Detective Rivera, arrived to find the maintenance worker in a state of trembling shock, his words laden with dread. "Someone dwells within the walls," he repeated, a mantra of fear. "Someone watches." The notebook yielded a trove of meticulous observations focused on Sarah Coleman, her routines, her interactions, her very essence captured within its pages. A descent into madness revealed itself through the dwindling sanity of the chronicler, culminating in cryptic symbols scrawled along the margins. "The subject resists my influence," the final entry lamented. "She defies me, none defy me." Forensic experts delved into the crawl space, unearthing fingerprints that defied identification within any known database. A web of hidden passages, some aged by the passage of time, interconnected the building's walls and ceilings, leading to 5 separate apartments, yet converging upon a single vantage point, Sarah Coleman's residence. Residents of the present professed ignorance to any peculiarities beyond the ordinary clatter of communal living. Former inhabitants, however, painted a darker portrait, tales of unease, of unseen gazes, of peculiar sounds that drove them to silence in fear of being labeled paranoid. The puzzle unraveled with the discovery of microscopic blood traces within one of the concealed recesses, matched through DNA analysis to Martin Weaver, a former tenant who had vanished without a trace years prior. His disappearance, shrouded in mystery, found a sinister connection to the apartment directly below Sarah's. Delving into Martin's abrupt departure, Detective Morris unearthed a narrative of discord with a fellow resident, Edward, a recluse whose shadow loomed over the building. Edward's enigmatic nature, coupled with a history of transient living and a penchant for seclusion, drew a chilling portrait of a man with a dark obsession. A journey into Edward's past revealed a trail of restless movement, a trail that led to a remote cabin adorned with a macabre collection of photographs, notes, and journals detailing the lives of unsuspecting subjects. The map of his twisted endeavors sprawled across the walls, tracing a legacy of voyeurism and delusion. Beneath the cabin's shadow, the earth yielded its grim secrets, each disturbed patch revealing a life extinguished at Edward's hand. The forensic orchestra commenced its grim symphony of identification, while Detective Morris, haunted by the specter of Sarah's absence, returned to the apartment building where shadows still whispered in the walls. Though the hidden passages were sealed, whispers persisted among the residents, prompting a fresh investigation. Amidst the installation of new security measures, a small notebook emerged from the shadows, a harbinger of revelations yet to unfold. The notebook, inked with a chilling message, hinted at a new lair beyond the reach of discovery. The race against time commenced as the night unfurled its dark veil, revealing a tale of evasion and pursuit of a phantom named Edward Mercer, skilled in the art of concealment. Thermal scans unveiled a void within the walls, devoid of human presence, while Sarah Coleman's absence echoed through the corridors of time, her fate intertwined with a tapestry of vanishing souls across distant lands. Detective Morris, haunted by the whispers of unseen footsteps, found himself cast adrift in the night, pondering the shadows that lingered beyond his gaze, wondering if another harbinger of darkness lay concealed in the stillness, listening, waiting, and watching. Story 19. In the heart of the town stood the old library, its fate sealed in the impending shadow of demolition. The workers toiled tirelessly, their hammers and saws echoing through the quiet streets. As the final bricks were set to fall, a twist of fate unraveled in the form of a hidden latch nestled within the ancient bookshelf. With a gentle click, the shelves parted, unveiling a secret passage leading to a chamber untouched by time. The air hung heavy with the weight of years gone by, a palpable stillness that whispered of secrets long kept hidden. Within the hidden room, devoid of life's usual warmth, stood a solitary chair, its presence a stark contrast against the barren walls. The chair, anchored to the floor with a sense of permanence, bore witness to the silent echoes of the past, and etched upon the wall in a haunting repetition, a message lingered, I am still here. The call went out, a crackling voice over the radio, a discovery that would unravel the threads of a mystery long forgotten. Detective Morgan Walsh arrived on the scene, his seasoned eyes taking in the chilling tableau before him. Shadows danced in the beam of his flashlight, illuminating the cryptic message that adorned the walls like a ghostly plea. Contain the area, Walsh commanded, his words a solemn decree in the hushed chamber. Let no one disturb the remnants of what lies within until the hand of forensics unveils its truth. The history of the library whispered tales of the Harrington family, a name steeped in prominence and shadow. A family torn asunder by the disappearance of their daughter, Rebecca Enigma, that had lingered like a specter in the night. Her vanishing act during the final throes of college had left a void, a mystery unsolved despite the relentless search that had ensued. As the forensic team painstakingly combed through the hidden room, they unearthed fragments of a shattered past. Strands of hair and fibers clung to the ancient chair, a silent testimony to the struggles that had unfolded within its grasp. Traces of blood and skin whispered of a captive's torment, a tale of captivity etched in the very walls that held it prisoner. Walsh delved deeper, his mind a labyrinth of questions and shadows. The timing of the library's donation, a gift shrouded in grief, tugged at the edges of his consciousness. A puzzle piece that refused to fit neatly into the narrative, hinting at a darkness that lurked beneath the surface. And then a revelation like a crack in the facade of a carefully constructed lie. The DNA from the hidden room, a silent witness to the truth, spoke volumes. Rebecca had not fled into the night. She had been ensnared in a web of deceit spun by her own kin. The walls of the library whispered tales of Maxwell Harrington, the family patriarch whose shadow loomed large over the unfolding tragedy. A man whose obsession had led to unspeakable horrors, a darkness that had festered unchecked for far too long. In Maxwell's study, the damning evidence lay hidden a journal, its pages a testament to a mind unhinged. The final entry, a chilling confession of a man driven to madness by his own sins, laid bare the truth that had eluded them for so long. And so justice wove its intricate dance, a tapestry of redemption and reckoning. Maxwell's cold admission shattered the silence, a confession that reverberated through the halls of the library. Beneath the floorboards of the hidden room, a grim discovery awaited the bones of a lost soul, a daughter betrayed by her own blood. And as the gavel fell, a chapter closed, the weight of justice finally finding its mark. The library, once slated for destruction, now stood as a monument to a life extinguished too soon. Flowers adorned its steps, a tribute to a soul that had whispered its truth from beyond the grave. And in the quiet of the night, a message lingered in the air, a final farewell from a spirit unbound. I am still here. Story 20. She crossed the threshold, the dust dancing in the musty air. The abandoned house stood frozen in time, with peeling walls and furniture draped in ghostly sheets. Each step she took felt like retracing a mysterious path, a loop leading her back to the parlor no matter which door she opened. The only escape was the way she had come, but when she turned, the front door had vanished into thin air. The discovery of Morgan Pierce's body turned the forgotten Victorian into a scene of intrigue and dread. Detective Sarah Lind observed silently as forensic technicians moved through the dim rooms like phantoms. Locals whispered about the house, where compasses spun wildly and shadows seemed to whisper secrets. Now, those secrets were darker than anyone could have imagined. The initial examination suggests she's been deceased for about 3 days, the medical examiner murmured. Death by asphyxiation. Morgan was found seated in an antique chair in the parlor, her serene expression suggesting she awaited a visitor. No signs of struggle, no marks of resistance. The eerie stillness of the scene sent shivers down the spines of seasoned investigators. "Who discovered the body?" Lind inquired, her voice soft in the heavy silence. "A real estate agent showing the property," her partner replied. They mistook her for a trespasser until they drew closer. The house had remained empty since the passing of its previous owner, Ulinter Blackwood, a chapter closed by family disputes, leaving it forgotten and forsaken, a relic of the past. Morgan Pierce, a young researcher fascinated by architectural anomalies, had been drawn to the house's enigmatic reputation. Her journal entries spoke of strange phenomena echoes that lingered, chilling drafts that defied explanation, and doors that led to shifting realities. Her final notes hinted at documenting these anomalies, but the equipment she mentioned remained elusive. During the investigation, traces of a rare alkaloid were found in Morgan's system, a substance linked to shamanic practices that could distort perception but not cause death. Her boyfriend insisted she was meticulous in her work, ruling out any intentional self-harm. Deleted messages on her phone hinted at a mysterious connection to someone who shared her obsession with the house, someone who spoke of the dwelling as if it held secrets waiting to be unveiled. The trail led to Adam Reeves, an expert in architectural history who shared Morgan's fascination with the Victorians' mysteries. He spoke of optical illusions and hidden designs, of a deeper truth beyond mere tricks of the eye. Though devastated by Morgan's demise, Reeves had an alibi placing him far from the scene at the time of her passing. The puzzle deepened. A revelation from Ulinter Blackwood's grandson shed light on a dark family secret, the claiming. Generations of Blackwoods had met their end in the parlor, each one found in serene repose as if beckoned by unseen forces. Journals hinted at a malevolent influence lurking within the house, a force that drew souls into its grasp with deceptive tranquility. A hidden compartment behind the parlor fireplace unveiled a chamber of ancient artifacts, each imbued with whispers of forgotten rituals and lost knowledge. Among them, a carved figurine representing a deity of thresholds and transitions, its presence tying Morgan's fate to an ancient power that defied comprehension. The house held more than mere mysteries, it held a gateway to realms unseen. As the investigation unfolded, new clues emerged: faint fingerprints, dust patterns disturbed by an unseen presence. 3 weeks in, Adam Reeves met a fate mirroring Morgan's, his body discovered in a pose mirroring hers, the same alkaloid staining his system. Clutched in his hand, a key that unlocked the final mystery of the Victorian, a truth that transcended mere mortal understanding. In his final testament, Reeves spoke of the house's true nature, of perceptions warped by unseen forces, of a truth that once grasped, bound the soul to its enigmatic halls. The The case remained open, a tale of suspicious deaths and spectral whispers haunting the condemned Victorian. Locals spoke of lights flickering within its walls, of visitors who vanished without a trace, swallowed by the house's insatiable hunger for those who dared to unravel its enigma. Some believed the house claimed those who delved too deep, while others saw Morgan and Reeves as seekers of an ancient wisdom beyond mortal ken. The truth lingered like a specter in the night, an enigma as confounding as a door leading back to the beginning in a house where time stood still and reality wavered on the threshold of the unknown. Story 21. In the quiet stillness of the night, a story unfolded within the walls of a Victorian-era home, nestled in a sleepy town where time seemed to linger in the whispers of the wind. Michael and Sarah Klein, the new inhabitants of the old residence, embarked on a journey they never anticipated when they uncovered a mystery hidden beneath the layers of peeling wallpaper. The house, with its rich history and intricate woodwork, beckoned to them with a promise of a peaceful life away from the chaos of the world. Little did they know, the peace they sought would soon be shattered by the secrets veiled within the walls. It began innocently enough, a water stain in the master bedroom catching Sarah's eye, a yellowish hue spreading like a forgotten memory across the floral wallpaper. As Michael gently prodded the discolored spot, the paper surrendered, revealing a glimpse into the past, a glimpse that would unravel the fabric of their reality. Layer by layer, they peeled back time, each piece of wallpaper telling a story of its own. And then, amidst the faded patterns of bygone eras, they found it a name scrawled in ink, repeated endlessly as if trying to etch itself into the very essence of the house. Eleanor Winters, Sarah whispered, her voice barely a breath in the silence that now enveloped them. The name hung in the air, pregnant with unanswered questions, a ghostly presence watching from the shadows. Their search for answers led them down a winding path of discovery, each clue pulling them deeper into a web of intrigue and uncertainty. The name Eleanor Winters, a phantom from the past, haunted their thoughts, refusing to be ignored. As they delved into the archives of time, a single result emerged: a missing persons case, faded and forgotten, much like the name on the wall. Eleanor Winters, lost to the world, her story buried beneath layers of deceit and deception. The pieces of the puzzle began to align, the threads of fate weaving a tapestry of truth and lies. The woman who had sold them the house, Margaret Cavendish, bore a striking resemblance to the missing Eleanor, a resemblance that sent shivers down their spines. With each revelation, the walls of their home seemed to whisper secrets long kept hidden, a silent witness to a tragedy that had been waiting to resurface. The lines between past and present blurred, reality bending to accommodate the weight of the truth. As the investigation unfolded, their quaint home transformed into a stage for a drama long forgotten. The players' ghosts of a bygone era seeking closure in a world that had moved on without them. And then, in a moment of chilling clarity, the truth revealed itself in a twist of fate that no one could have foreseen. The name on the wall, the missing woman, the enigmatic Margaret, all connected by a thread of madness and obsession that transcended time itself. The house, once a sanctuary, now stood as a silent witness to a crime of passion and betrayal, its walls bearing the scars of a mind fractured by the weight of its own deception. And as the night deepened and the stars whispered ancient secrets to the sleeping world, Michael and Sarah found solace in the knowledge that sometimes the past has a way of finding its voice, even in the quietest of places. Story 22. The old house stood silent, shrouded in mystery and neglect. For years it remained vacant, a ghostly echo of the past. Whispers of the young woman who had disappeared within its walls lingered among the neighbors, a tale of sorrow and unanswered questions. When the new tenants arrived, drawn by the allure of affordable rent in a quiet neighborhood, they uncovered a chilling secret. The bedroom, rumored to be locked from the inside, held a stagnant breath of time. Dust danced in the air, settling like a heavy shroud of forgotten memories. As they forced the stubborn door open, a scene frozen in time greeted them. The bed neatly made, the mirror gleaming in eerie perfection. A solitary candle, now a mere puddle of wax, stood as a silent sentinel on the desk, its flame extinguished long ago, leaving only a residue of melancholy in its wake. But it was the notebook that captured their attention, its pages whispering a tale of darkness and intrigue. Detective Morgan, a figure of quiet determination, pored over the words penned by Elise Winters, a young woman lost to the shadows of the night. Elise's meticulous handwriting told a story of fear and paranoia, of a lurking presence that haunted her every move. The final entry, etched with urgency, spoke of unseen eyes watching, of a danger looming just beyond the veil of perception. The room, once a sanctuary, now bore witness to the unraveling of a life cut short. The detective, guided by the ghostly traces left behind, delved into a world of corporate deceit and betrayal. Elise's connections to a prestigious law firm hinted at a web of deception, of numbers manipulated and truths concealed. Her pursuit of justice, her quest for truth, had led her down a path fraught with danger. The revelations hidden within the room's confines painted a picture of greed and malice, of lives sacrificed on the altar of corporate greed. The truth, like a flickering flame in the darkness, beckoned to be uncovered. With each piece of evidence unearthed, the shadows receded, revealing a chilling conspiracy that spanned years. The quiet neighborhood, once thought safe, now held secrets darker than any could have imagined. As the detective pieced together the puzzle, a sinister figure emerged from the shadows of the past. Vincent Harriman, a man of influence and power, stood at the center of the storm, his hands stained with the blood of the innocent. The hidden passage, a gateway to the truth buried beneath layers of deception, led to a reckoning long overdue. Harriman's fall from grace was swift and merciless, his crimes laid bare for all to see. In the quiet of the courtroom, Elise's voice echoed through the hallowed halls of justice. Her sacrifice, her unwavering pursuit of truth, had brought down a titan of industry, exposing the rot at the heart of society. The house, a silent witness to the horrors that had unfolded within its walls, stood as a monument to the courage of one woman's stand against corruption. Its windows, like eyes peering into the soul of the guilty, bore witness to the justice that had been served. And as the night fell, casting shadows long and deep, the house stood empty once more, a relic of the past. But its walls whispered a tale of redemption, of a soul at peace, knowing that justice had finally been served. Story 23. Once upon a time, a mysterious package arrived at Sarah Miller's doorstep. No return label, no tracking number, just a damp cardboard box touched by the morning dew. Curiosity beckoned her to open it, despite the unfamiliar name on the package. Inside lay a VHS tape, accompanied by a simple note that read, "Watch alone." As Sarah held the tape in her hands, she felt a weight, a sense of forbidden knowledge lingering within the black plastic. The suburban world outside her window carried on its routine melodies the distant barking of a dog, the laughter of children, the buzz of a lawnmower, unaware of the enigma that had just entered Sarah's life. With a mix of curiosity and unease, Sarah inserted the tape into her old VCR. The screen flickered to life, revealing a dimly lit room with a man seated in a chair, his features shrouded in shadows. His voice, steady but hushed, introduced himself as Daniel Whitaker. He spoke of innocence, of being framed for a crime he didn't commit. As the tape unfolded, Sarah learned of Catherine Walsh's murder, of the evidence stacked against Daniel, evidence that seemed too perfect, too neatly placed. Detective Eliza Ramirez found herself entangled in a web of deceit as more tapes surfaced, each revealing a layer of conspiracy surrounding Catherine's death. The investigation took a turn towards PharmaCorp, a pharmaceutical giant entangled in a whistleblower case that Catherine was set to testify in. Sarah received a second package, filled with incriminating documents that painted a picture of corruption and cover-ups within the company. With each revelation, Sarah and Detective Ramirez unraveled the truth behind Daniel's framing. They followed his trail of breadcrumbs to a storage unit, where evidence of the conspiracy lay hidden in plain sight. Justice, slow but sure, found its way as the perpetrators were exposed and brought to account. In the end, as Daniel reclaimed his freedom and Sarah pondered the events that had unfolded, they stood together on her porch. An unlikely connection forged by a package meant for another, by a truth that found its way to those willing to seek it out. The tapes, now evidence of a tangled tale of lies and redemption, served as a reminder that sometimes the answers we seek come in unexpected forms, delivered to us by chance, by fate, by the mysterious workings of the universe. And in that quiet moment on Sarah's porch, they both understood that the wrong address had led them to the right path, to the truth that had been waiting to be unveiled. Story 24, in the shadowed depths of the attic, concealed beneath a worn blanket, they stumbled upon it. A porcelain doll, ancient and fragile, with eyes of blue that seemed to hold secrets untold. Sarah and Michael, a young couple captivated by the allure of a Victorian house filled with whispers of the past, discovered the doll without knowing the eerie tale it carried within its painted features. At first, they dismissed it as just another forgotten relic of bygone days, a mere trinket left behind by former inhabitants. But as night descended and they sought solace in the embrace of sleep, a peculiar unease settled upon the air, thick and oppressive. The silence that enveloped them felt charged with an unseen presence, a whisper of something unsettling lingering just beyond the edges of perception. Morning dawned, casting its gentle light upon their world, only to reveal a chilling truth: the doll was no longer confined to the quiet confines of the attic. Instead, it now perched ominously at the foot of their bed, its unblinking gaze fixed upon them with an unsettling intensity. Detective Rachel Winters, a seeker of truths shrouded in darkness, was summoned to the scene of a macabre discovery. In the master bedroom, a tableau of horror awaited her: the lifeless form of a woman, arranged in a twisted pose as if a puppet manipulated by unseen hands. Her eyes stared wide with terror, a silent scream etched upon her frozen features. Nearby in the hallway lay the male victim, his limbs contorted in a desperate attempt to flee the unknown horror that had befallen them. As Detective Winters delved into the enigmatic puzzle before her, a sense of disquiet settled in the depths of her soul. The crime scene, pristine and undisturbed, offered no easy answers, no tangible clues to unravel the mystery that lay at its heart. Each detail, meticulously captured by the lenses of forensic photographers, hinted at a malevolent force at play, a shadowy presence orchestrating a sinister dance of death. Interviews with neighbors unveiled tales of spectral sightings, a flicker of movement behind curtained windows, the ghostly echo of childish laughter echoing through the stillness of the night. An elderly woman spoke of shadows that danced in the moonlit hours, while another whispered of voices that spoke in tongues unknown, weaving a tapestry of dread around the ill-fated house. Forensic analysis unearthed a trail of microscopic evidence, threads of vintage fabric woven into the very essence of the dwelling. Cotton and silk, remnants of a bygone era, whispered of secrets long forgotten, of a darkness lurking in the shadows. And yet, amidst the tangible remnants of a past steeped in sorrow, one glaring truth remained: the absence of any human touch, any trace of an intruder's presence. Delving into the annals of history, Detective Winters uncovered a tapestry of tragedy woven through the ages, a legacy of death and despair that clung to the house like a shroud. 3 souls, lost to the mists of time, their fates entwined in a web of inexplicable occurrences. Each victim had sought to alter the fabric of the house, to reshape its essence in ways unseen, unknowing of the peril that awaited them. A newspaper clipping, yellowed with age, revealed a tale of a doll maker and his daughter, bound together in life and death. The doll maker, a man of dark arts and forbidden knowledge, had crafted a final creation, a doll imbued with the essence of his beloved child, a vessel for her restless spirit. And in the attic, hidden from prying eyes, lay the key to a mystery that defied all rational explanation. As the investigation spiraled into the realms of the unknown, a revelation emerged, a connection that spanned generations, linking past with present in a dance of shadows and whispers. The doll, a conduit for forces beyond comprehension, held the key to a truth that lay veiled in darkness, waiting to be unveiled. But as the tendrils of the investigation stretched into the void, the truth remained elusive, slipping through their grasp like sand through an hourglass. No suspects emerged from the shadows, no rational explanation could account for the horrors that had transpired. And so, the case lingered in the liminal space between fact and fiction, a riddle without a solution, a mystery without end. And then, in a twist of fate that defied all reason, the doll vanished from its confines, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions and a sense of disquiet that lingered like a specter in the night. Detective Winters, her resolve tested by the enigma that had eluded her grasp, retired from the fray, leaving behind a legacy of unanswered queries and a sense of foreboding that haunted the corridors of her mind. The house, a silent witness to a tale of woe, passed into new hands, its secrets buried beneath layers of time and memory. The attic, once a sanctuary for the enigmatic doll, now stood empty, a void echoing with the whispers of a past that refused to be forgotten. And yet on still nights when the world slumbered, a faint shadow would flit across the attic window, and the echoes of a child's laughter would drift upon the wind, a reminder of mysteries unsolved and truths left unspoken. Story 25. In the quiet stillness of the night, the new homeowners noticed a peculiar phenomenon, the crackling of the old intercom system that echoed through the halls of their Victorian manor. It seemed like a forgotten relic from a bygone era, now revived with a mysterious purpose. Curiosity tugged at the husband's thoughts one fateful night, prompting him to press the button, unaware of the enigmatic message that awaited. A whisper, barely audible, seeped through the crackling speaker, chilling him to the core. "Why did you come back?" His hands trembled as he recoiled in shock. Standing behind him, his wife denied ever uttering those words, casting a shadow of doubt over the eerie encounter. The manor, ensconced amidst ancient oak trees, exuded an aura of tranquility that belied its hidden secrets. Daniel and Meredith Parker, drawn to its historic charm, had acquired the property at a surprisingly modest price, guided by their shared love for the past. The vintage intercom system, a feature connecting every room, had captivated the couple's imagination, promising a glimpse into the house's enigmatic history. Detective Sarah Reeves, summoned to the manor under mysterious circumstances, arrived to unravel the tangled web of events that had transpired within its walls. The gravel crunched beneath her tires as she reached the property, a sense of foreboding lingering in the air. Daniel, his complexion ashen, welcomed her into the dimly lit foyer, his unease palpable as he recounted the unsettling occurrences involving the intercom system. Whispered static, haunting murmurs, and unexplained voices had plagued the couple, driving them to uncover the truth hidden within their home's walls. In the solemnity of the living room, Meredith clutched a steaming mug, her eyes betraying a silent turmoil. Without preamble, she divulged a startling revelation, a hidden chamber behind a wall, concealing a long-forgotten secret. As Daniel had sought to expand the kitchen pantry, they had stumbled upon a leather-bound journal, its pages yellowed with age and filled with the poignant words of Alina, the journal's enigmatic author. Her entries spoke of fear, suspicion, and a looming sense of danger, hinting at a tragic fate that had befallen her decades ago. The investigation unveiled a haunting tale of betrayal and deceit, centered around the previous owners, Vincent and Alina Blackwood. Vincent's sinister actions, veiled in deception and manipulation, had cast a shadow over the house for years. Forensic revelations unearthed long-buried truths, as human remains discovered beneath the garden shed bore witness to a heinous crime committed in the shadows of time. Vincent Blackwood's facade of innocence crumbled in the face of overwhelming evidence, his confession chilling in its stark clarity. The echoes of Alina's voice, transmitted through the intercom system, had tormented him, driving him to silence her forever. His calculated deception, meticulously woven over the years, shattered under the weight of justice as he faced the consequences of his malevolent deeds. As the dark veil of the past lifted, Daniel and Meredith chose to part ways with the haunted manor, unable to bear the weight of its tragic history. A solemn memorial in the garden honored Alina's memory, offering a semblance of closure amidst the lingering whispers of the past. The intercom system, harbinger of secrets long kept, was dismantled by the new owners, its ghostly echoes fading into silence as the house embraced a new chapter of serenity. Detective Reeves, her mind lingering on the enigmatic case of the Blackwoods, made a final pilgrimage to the manila folder that held their story. Closing it with a sense of finality, she pondered the house's silent vigil, a witness to the echoes of time that reverberated within its walls. Known among law enforcement circles as the house that answered back, it stood as a testament to the enduring power of truth, whispered on the winds that carried secrets untold. Story 26, The Enigmatic Reflection. She cleared the mist from the mirror, gazing at her own reflection. Everything appeared as it should, her face, her attire. Yet a subtle discomfort crept in. A flicker caught in the corner of her eye, a movement not of her own making. And when she turned away, her reflection remained, unmoving yet watchful. This was the moment that plunged Rebecca Thorne into a bewildering mystery that would captivate investigators and unsettle a community for years to come. Rebecca dwelled alone in a modest apartment nestled in a serene, suburban enclave. Her acquaintances painted her as meticulous, reserved, a woman who preferred solitude yet maintained pleasantries with those nearby. Her occupation as a data analyst for a medium-sized firm dictated a life of order and exactitude. Nothing in her demeanor hinted at her imminent role as the focal point of one of the most perplexing criminal inquiries in recent memory. The initial signs seemed trivial. Objects in Rebecca's abode shifted inexplicably, no items missing, just rearranged. A mug displaced to a different shelf, books rearranged, her toothbrush misplaced. She attributed these anomalies to absent-mindedness, a byproduct of toiling long hours beneath harsh fluorescent lights, her gaze fixed on spreadsheets until the lines blurred. Detective Marion Shaw's desk received the first complaint when Rebecca, after enduring weeks of these disruptions, finally reached out to the authorities. The initial evaluation, no evidence of criminal activity, perhaps a matter better suited for mental health services than law enforcement. Shaw documented the issue, consigning it to the stack of non-urgent cases. No concrete evidence, Shaw later recounted. No broken locks, no vanished possessions, no signs of forced entry. Just a woman feeling the presence of something amiss in her dwelling. The pivotal incident in the bathroom altered everything. During her subsequent encounter with the police, Rebecca recounted it vividly how her reflection appeared to move independently, how she sensed an unseen gaze even in solitude. This time she provided proof, footage from a security camera she had installed, trained on her front door. The recording unveiled a revelation that sent shivers down even the most seasoned officers' spines. The grainy video displayed Rebecca departing for work in the morning. Yet, 20 minutes later, a figure identical to Rebecca used a key to enter her apartment. Forensic experts scrutinized the footage for signs of manipulation or tampering. None were found. The individual entering mirrored Rebecca's movements, attire, even carrying her distinctive leather bag. However, according to time-stamped footage from her workplace security system, Rebecca had already swiped into her office building across town. "We're facing a doppelganger scenario," Detective Shaw disclosed to her superior. "Someone who has meticulously studied Ms. Thorne and can imitate her with eerie accuracy." The probe deepened. Fingerprints within the apartment matched solely Rebecca's. No alien DNA surfaced. Neighbors reported witnessing nothing out of the ordinary, just Rebecca's routine comings and goings. Mrs. Keller, a neighbor, mentioned greeting Rebecca upon her return one evening, receiving no response, a deviation she found unusual yet not alarming. Rebecca commenced documenting the disturbances in a journal. Minor alterations within her residence accumulated. Food vanished from her fridge that she hadn't consumed. Her computer displayed searches she hadn't conducted. Most disconcerting were the photographs on her phone's self-portraits resembling her but taken without her recollection. In some, her countenance seemed subtly distorted, the grin too wide, the eyes overly intense. "I feel as though I'm descending into madness," she confided to Detective Shaw during their third meeting. Or perhaps someone is orchestrating this illusion. A breakthrough emerged when investigators discerned a pattern in the security footage. The doppelganger only materialized when Rebecca departed for specific commitments: therapy sessions, yoga classes, Sunday morning grocery runs, predetermined engagements with foreseeable durations. "Someone possesses intimate knowledge of your routine," Shaw elucidated. "This isn't haphazard, this is deliberate surveillance and infiltration." A forensic psychologist posited that they were confronting a fixation case, someone fixated on becoming Rebecca, inhabiting her existence, possibly aiming to supplant her entirely. Such occurrences were rare but documented in psychological annals. The culprit typically underwent a psychological rupture and fixated on a target representing something they coveted: stability, beauty, success, normalcy. The focus zeroed in when Rebecca mentioned a former co-worker, Lily Winters, who had been terminated following a surge of erratic behavior. Lily had collaborated closely with Rebecca, often commenting on their similarities. Post-dismissal, she dispatched a series of unsettling emails to Rebecca. "We could be identical," one missive expressed. "At times, I feel more like you than you do." Detective Shaw secured a warrant to search Lily's residence. The findings transformed the case from eerie to chilling. One chamber in Lily's abode had been transformed into a shrine-like replica of Rebecca's bedroom. Adorning the walls were myriad pictures of Rebecca entering her residence, shopping, socializing, all taken unbeknownst to her. A wardrobe in a closet housed precise replicas of Rebecca's attire. Makeup mirroring Rebecca's preferred brands occupied a vanity alongside meticulous notes concerning her habits, speech patterns, and daily routines. Most incriminating were the practice videos. Lily had documented herself mimicking Rebecca's gait, gestures, expressions. The evolution was evident, initial attempts clumsy and conspicuous, subsequent ones nearly indistinguishable from the genuine Rebecca. She aspired to assume my identity, a subdued Rebecca murmured upon viewing the evidence. She wasn't merely mimicking me, she was erasing me. Forensic technicians unearthed sophisticated tools for key replication and electronic access card duplication. Lily had maintained an intricate system for monitoring Rebecca's movements, including a calendar projecting her schedule in detail. What eluded investigators was Lily's ultimate objective. Journals discovered in her residence contained incoherent entries vacillating between first and third person, occasionally referring to Rebecca as me and her within the same paragraph. The concluding entry unnerved investigators. Soon, only one of us shall endure. The stronger incarnation shall prevail. Upon authorities moved to apprehend Lily, she had vanished. Signs of a hurried departure marred her residence drawers ajar, certain technology absent. An alert spanning the nation was disseminated. Rebecca was ushered into protective custody, relocated to a secure abode under constant surveillance. For 3 weeks, authorities monitored every site linked to her previous life. Lily remained elusive. The case veered into its unsettling denouement when a security officer at Rebecca's former workplace reported an anomaly. Rebecca had been sighted entering the premises despite being on leave. Surveillance footage corroborated the account. A figure identical to Rebecca had entered the facility using a valid ID card, proceeded to her previous workstation, and spent 40 minutes perusing her files before exiting. Rebecca, still sheltered in a guarded safe house, couldn't have been present at the office. The implications crystallized. Lily hadn't absconded, she had made her incursion. She now inhabited Rebecca's life, assuming her identity while the authentic Rebecca remained concealed. The case lingers as an unsolved enigma. Lily Winters evades capture. Rebecca Thorne chose not to resume her former life, opting to forge a new identity in an undisclosed haven. Detective Shaw retains a photograph on her desk, 2 women strikingly similar in appearance. One embodies Rebecca Thorne, the other personifies Lily Winters. At times, she scrutinizes their visages, seeking the disparities, the giveaways that would set them apart. The genuinely chilling aspect Shaw often imparts to fledgling detectives isn't that someone may resemble you or mimic your voice. It's the fervor with which they yearn to assume your identity, erasing themselves in the process. Identity isn't solely about our outward projection, it's our most zealously guarded possession. And at times, we only appreciate its worth when someone endeavors to seize it. Story 27. In the heart of the city stood a quaint coffee shop that held secrets as deep as the night. For years, a man with no name, only known as John Doe, made this shop his sanctuary. His presence was as silent as the whisper of a breeze, his routine unchanging like the rhythm of waves against the shore. The barista recognized his face, but his true identity remained a mystery, hidden in the shadows of his enigmatic aura. Then one fateful day, the man vanished into the mist of the unknown. The morning sun rose, painting the shop in golden hues, but John Doe's usual seat remained empty. The air was heavy with anticipation, a sense of foreboding lingering like a ghost. When the authorities delved into his absence, they stumbled upon a wallet left behind, a solitary clue in the enigma of his disappearance. Within the wallet lay a driver's license bearing a face without a name, an address lost in the void. Detective Sarah Mercer, with eyes like shards of ice, studied the security footage like a seer peering into the unknown. Each frame revealed John's ordinary actions: entering, sitting, sipping his coffee, and then the inexplicable vanishing act. He crossed the threshold into the restroom hallway, but from there he slipped away into the ether, leaving behind a puzzle without a solution. As Mercer delved further into the mystery, she uncovered a world beyond comprehension. The wallet held no secrets but blank spaces where details should have resided. Credit cards led to nowhere, numbers dancing in a void of non-existence. Cash, a receipt, and a cryptic business card with a whisper of a phone number, all fragments of a puzzle waiting to be solved. The barista, a silent witness to John's presence, shared snippets of his existence: polite, solitary, a man of few words. The notebook he left behind, a cryptic manuscript of coded language and mysterious sketches, held the key to a realm beyond the tangible. Mercer's investigation unfurled like a tapestry of shadows and light, revealing layers of intrigue woven into the fabric of reality. The mirror, an ancient sentinel standing guard between worlds, whispered secrets of dimensional crossings and temporal anomalies. Each reflection held a story untold, each gaze a glimpse into the unknown. The journal hidden behind the mirror spoke of experiments in the manipulation of time and identity, of windows between realities waiting to be opened. John Doe, a man out of time, a wanderer between worlds, his essence imprinted in the very fabric of the coffee shop's existence. As the investigation spiraled into the depths of the inexplicable, echoes of John's presence reverberated through the shop. Reflections danced independently, whispers of his shadow haunting the corners of perception. The truth, a fragile thread woven into the tapestry of existence, threatened to unravel the fabric of reality itself. A chance encounter with an elderly physicist unveiled the final piece of the puzzle: a man lost to time, a scientist who dared to breach the boundaries of the known. Daniel Weston, a brilliant mind trapped between worlds, his legacy a testament to the fragility of existence. In the shadows of the closing night, Mercer beheld a revelation that shattered the boundaries of the possible. Two versions of the same man existing in parallel, gazing into the abyss of each other's souls. The mirror, a gateway between worlds, fractured under the weight of truth, revealing a final message written in the script of the unknown. The experiment concluded, the window sealed shut, leaving behind a legacy of mysteries unsolved. The coffee shop, a silent witness to the dance of realities, closed its doors, its secrets buried in the rubble of time. Daniel Weston, a specter of the past, vanished into the mists of legend, his essence lingering in the echoes of the unknown. And Detective Mercer, a seeker of truths beyond the veil, retired into the shadows of obscurity, her gaze fixed upon the horizon of possibility. In the stillness of the night she sat, pen in hand, writing the echoes of a story untold, her reflection shimmering in the fragments of a shattered mirror, a doorway to worlds unseen.